Yes. Man. That's my alarm. Oh, that's my alarm when I gotta wake up at like 4:30. It is awful, but that's why it has to be awful, because it's 4:30 in the morning. Sunday morning alarm is a little more pleasant. Hi, Renee.
Alys Beach. Yeah, bring them back today. I like to pretend you were being nice.
Annie.
Good morning and welcome to Walton County's Technical Review Committee meeting for Wednesday, October 6, 2021. We've got a fairly lengthy agenda this morning, and we have some housekeeping. First of all, in the way of announcements, I would like to remind all the applicants that it's our policy that the TRC signs be updated for the convenience of the public and transparency of this particular portion of county government. We have a number of continuances this morning. We also have the minutes to approve. So we'll take the minutes first. Do we have any adjustments to the minutes from September 15?
I don't see any. I'll move to approve the September 15th TRC meetings minutes as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, the September 15 minutes are approved. We'll move right into project review. Item number 2, we have a request to continue that item to October 20. Can we have a motion at the dais?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, this thing
I just had a question about
Okay.
John Humphrey. It's the building setback and building height with the 4 stories. The comment was that it's 4 stories, so the building setback needs to be different. But it's a 3-story townhome with parking underneath. So I just wanted to get clarified that.
Yeah, and we're not counting that parking as a story.
As a story. So it would be a 3-story townhome with, okay. Thank you, Mac.
Yes, ma'am, you may.
Good morning and thank you. Barbara Morano, South Walton Community Council. We submitted an email asking for a community meeting. We have not heard back. I appreciate the continuance. I really give positive strokes to the planner because there was a number of gaps in that application. But we have concerns, and I would like MAC to encourage the developer and engineer to have a meeting with the surrounding communities.
This is at the corner of Blue Pine Boulevard and County Road 30A.
Correct. That affects the Pines,
Have we
Coquina.
had a community meeting?
Yeah, we have not. We have one scheduled for the 18th, later this week.
How are we going to know about that? And where is it? Well, how will we get the information?
Are we sending notices?
I'm sorry, who has the email? Ms. Edwards?
Annie,
Okay,
associate at work.
all right. So you have my email?
Yes.
Okay, that's important. Okay, so that's going to be on the 18th, where?
I'm not sure. I have to get with her.
Can we get a hold of that information
Yes, sir.
before the meeting?
Yes, it'll be sent to the county also.
No, I mean before this meeting's over.
Oh, before this.
Yeah. We're continuing this project to the 20th. They're proposing to have a community meeting on the 18th. Probably a good idea to let the public know when that is and county staff, given
Yes.
that it's less than 2 weeks from now.
Correct.
Find out for you.
Could I suggest that it even be continued after October 20th, since it's so close?
Very well might, but
Okay, thank you.
okay. Tell you what let's do. Let's go ahead and, we got a motion at the dais. It is very important that this meeting be announced today. And we very well may need to continue this beyond the 20th. But we have a motion to continue to the 20th today. So if you would be so kind as to let us know those details before today's meeting's over, we'll be happy to announce those for the public's benefit. Thank you, sir. We have a motion at the dais to continue this project to October 20. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is continued to October 20, and we expect to have an announcement about the community meeting in just a little while. Item number 3, this is the Buffalo Springs Resort. We had a request to continue. I'm going to suggest that needs to be a request to table. The project can be re-advertised when it's ready to come back, as we haven't had a resubmittal in some time now. So I'll entertain a motion to table this item.
So moved.
We have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is tabled and can be re-advertised when it's ready to come back for consideration. Item number 4, we have a request to continue to the October 20 meeting also. Can we have a motion at the dais? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is continued to October 20 at 8:30 a.m. in this location. Item number 5, we have a request to table this item. It can be re-advertised when it's ready to come back. The San Juan replat, can we have a motion to table that item?
Motion to table.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is tabled and can be re-advertised when it's ready to come back. Item number 6, Villages of Santa Rosa. We have a request to continue this item to November 3rd. Can we have a motion at the dais?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is continued to November 3rd. Item number 10, we have a request to continue this item to November 20. Also,
October 20th?
October 20. Can we have a motion at the dais?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed likewise? Hearing none. And I think that is the list of continuances, which takes us back to item number 7. South Walton Commerce Park and Bridal Shop, lot number 21, minor development reviewed by Bob Baronti. Bob, can you introduce it for us?
Yes, Mr. Chair. As you said, this is the South Walton Commerce Park Bridal Shop, Lot 21. It's a request for development order. It's a minor development application submitted by Brad Harris, P.E., on behalf of Matthews Bridal Company, LLC. Request to construct a 4,000 square foot commercial building on Lot 21 of the South Walton Commerce Park, PUD, on 0.48 acres plus or minus, with future land use of commercial in a zoning district of business park. The property is in District 1, and the parcel number is published in your staff report. Mr. Chair, there are just some minor outstanding comments that just will need to be resubmitted. We still need the fire department's comments, and all the rest of the comments can be addressed, and also get time for the other comments to be addressed. The applicant is here. May I enter the staff report in the record?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions from staff before I turn it over to the applicant?
No, sir. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Riley Palmer, Palmer Construction Management, representing the client here. I don't really have any specific requests. It's a pretty simple, straightforward project, and we've got a few minor comments to make, but I'm here to answer any questions, if you have any.
I'm not sure that I have any this morning. It looks like these are all minor comments, and given this is in a platted Commerce Park, I would expect the Sammys will be favorable also once we receive those. Anyone else have a question for the applicant? Mosquito control?
One question, should we reach back out to the fire department? It's been there for about almost 6 weeks now. I don't want to get held up with the comments. I wonder how we should just reach out to them to see if we can get their comments in.
Certainly welcome to do that. And I'm sure that the project manager will do the same.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bob, do we have a recommended motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to conditionally approve pending successful resubmittal. Move it to the development order.
Thank you, Bob.
I'll make that a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. This is a minor development, so we'll take the opportunity to invite any questions or comments from our public. Anyone wishing to ask a question or make a comment about this particular application? Seeing no hands up, we'll close that portion of the meeting. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved to move forward subject to satisfaction of all outstanding comments. Good morning. Yes, sir, if you could come to the podium and just read the information for us.
Draper Townhomes Community Meeting will be held October 18th at 3:30 p.m. Via Zoom. Mailouts will go out by October 10th. There'll be an ad running on October 9th. And it will be at our office, we'll be holding the Zoom meeting.
A community meeting sign posted also.
Yes, there'll be a sign posted.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, we did vote. And I think we're ready for number 8 now. True by Hilton at Santa Rosa Beach. It's a major development reviewed by Tim Brown. Tim, if you could introduce this one, please.
Yes, good morning. This is a major development order application submitted by David Forstrom requesting approval to construct a 114-unit hotel with pool amenity and associated infrastructure on 2.153 acres with a future land use of mixed use and a zoning of village mixed use. It's located in District 5. The only TRC outstanding comments remaining are from Dewberry. Excuse me. There's no remaining planning TRC comments, but there are a number of remaining scenic corridor comments that are outstanding. With that, I'd like to enter the staff report into the record, and unless the board has questions, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Tim.
Good morning, David Forstrom.
David?
I know there are the Dewberry comments. We resubmitted them. I believe we addressed them. There was an issue with a couple catch basins. The actual elevation on the survey was different from the previous approved development order. It was a minor change, but we corrected the elevation to be consistent. We added additional dimensional specifications for the parking area. We addressed the comments on the parking, overall parking, which is based on the combined development parking and uses. And then the outfall structure didn't match our drainage calculations. What we did is we took that outfall structure out of the right-of-way and removed it to the rear with a weir-type structure, which would probably be better anyway with all the construction going on in the right-of-way. I'm not really up to speed on the scenic corridor comments as far as this is my first project in a scenic corridor, so I'm not sure what we need to do with those. I looked through them. I'm not sure how to address those scenic corridor comments, but I think planning comments and all the other comments have been adequately addressed.
Mr. Chair, in regards to the parking, and being that it sounds like they're going to share parking with the adjacent use, do we need a shared parking agreement by both users or something of that effect too? I believe based on my comments that the site's going to require 159 parking spaces, and there's only 116 shown on this site. So that means they'd have to share 37 parking spaces with the adjacent user, the adjacent use.
Could I comment to that?
Sure.
I did talk to Tim Brown about that. This is a unified development Portofino that was originally approved for a mixed use. And I got an email from him. We went over the numbers and confirmed that 159 is good for the whole development, including our 116 plus the other on the other two, because it is a unified development. And for example, the stormwater is also unified. So there was no mention of shared parking agreement. I don't think that's required if it's a unified development order.
Actually, since these are no longer owned by the same developer,
Right.
we will require shared parking agreement.
Okay, we can get that. Yes.
Yeah, that will be a condition of approval.
Okay, yes, sir.
But you can have it. We just need to get that in place, and it needs to be recorded.
We will, yes, sir.
Have any scenic corridor questions? Most of those are architectural for the most part, although there are some components that are engineering related.
I believe some of the landscape type scenic corridor comments were incorporated into the planning comments with regard to the landscaping plan and were addressed.
I mean, do you have an architect on this project?
Yes, we do, yes. We've had conversations with Tim on that. I wasn't sure we're in the process I know it goes to Design Review Board next, and so he'll be preparing all those documents for that.
Most all of these are architectural related. I think we can probably move forward, subject to satisfaction of all of these before it gets scheduled. For
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Go to DRB with any of these outstanding.
Right, exactly.
Tim, are you comfortable with that?
Advertise it for the DRB. So there are some landscaping comments remaining, but most of them, like Mike said, are architectural because there's been no new architectural plans uploaded since the initial.
Right, and we were waiting, because we were going back and forth on the layout and the parking, so yes, you're correct. We're waiting for the final site plan.
So perhaps the biggest item is width of the building, because I can't find anywhere where it says how wide that building is. So that's why my comment says I can't determine the building width to the lot width ratio.
It should be on the site plan. If not, I can get to you today.
But that's probably the biggest scenic corridor comment, as long as they're within the 70%, the rest of the comments are.
Well, all of those don't have to be satisfied today.
No.
But they do need to be satisfied before we schedule for DRB.
Yes, sir.
So, I guess we can entertain a motion to conditionally approve, subject to satisfaction of all outstanding comment. Before advertising for DRB.
I'll make that into a form of a motion.
We have a motion to that effect. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is a major development. It'll get public hearings before Planning Commission, or DRB, Planning Commission, and Board of County Commissioners once it reaches that step. We will take a moment to invite any technical questions regarding this particular application from anyone in the audience. Anyone in the audience wish to ask a technical question about this particular application? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved to move forward to the DRB. Once all comments are satisfied, it can be advertised. Thank you, David. This moves us to item number 9, the Botanic Miramar Beach. Major development reviewed by Tim Brown. Tim, if you can introduce it for us.
Yes, thank you. This is a major development order application submitted by Core Engineering and Consulting, requesting approval to develop 321 apartments with pool amenity, a 5,000 square foot convenience store with gasoline sales, a 4,209 square foot fast food restaurant, 16,544 square feet of retail space, and associated infrastructure in 2 phases on 25.35 acres with a future land use of commercial and a zoning of general commercial. Property is located in District 4. So it looks like the only outstanding comments remaining are the floodplain, the conditional use for the apartments, and I have not received anything from fire. This came in a while ago, but I still don't have any fire comments. With all the scenic corridor requirements have been met. With that, I would like to enter the staff report into the record, and unless the board has questions, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Tim. It's so entered.
Good morning, Ed Stanford with Core Engineering and Consulting. We've been up here a couple times before. I'm sure you're aware of everything that's going on with this project. I can check with Sammy today to see where he's been on this. In fact, I reached out to him early on, so I'm not sure where we're at right now with the fire, but we did discuss certain access requirements early on this project, and we made those changes accordingly. But if he hasn't officially responded to the TRC, then I will catch up with him today and see what's going on with that. We are aware of community letters and comments regarding stormwater, wetlands, traffic, some flood issues to the north of us. I believe we handle our project accordingly. We've got our ZBA and our DRB meetings coming up. We are aware of the requirements to get approved at those meetings.
I sent you a list of questions earlier in the week from the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Have you had a chance to take a look at those?
Yes. And a lot of these are, they're technical questions that will be responded to as part of the Northwest Florida Water Management District permit approval. First comment was, does not seem to conform. I took pictures yesterday and have elevations, and we uploaded them. We've been out there after rain events to confirm the elevations of the existing water table. They're apparent out there on site. I know that there's questions about it. Even if we get into it and there's some, change in the geology for some reason, we always adjust. This is not a one and done deal. We will not permit something or build something that quote unquote just does not work. I realized they took a picture of a pond that we designed up in Bayview. It looks like it's silted over. That project's been sitting for several years, and that's a maintenance question. That owner needs to go out there and do what's required by the state, which is to maintain and operate their pond. Because one side is full and the other side is not. That leads me to believe that there's some operational issues. The rest of it is talking about, the weir location. These are all hydraulic models that are accepted by the county, by the state, requirements by the county and state. This is what we're adhering to. I don't know what else to respond to. We did look at it, and we do pop off to a wetlands area. It's an option.
Comments?
Didn't see the list of questions to comment on, but I really don't have any comments regarding the stormwater. I feel like the applicant has demonstrated that they meet our codes as well as the state codes. I don't know what specific concerns were presented.
Well, it was just being critical of the separation, which I went out there and took pictures. We're not sitting here trying to, cover up the fact that it's that the water table is at 6, 7, 8 feet, and that's why I went out there and took those pictures and uploaded those yesterday. And I took pictures before and sent them to UMAC. The ponds indicate where the water table is, and we're in a wet season right now. It's a great time to document this, and we have done that. Whether the geotech says this or that, it doesn't really matter, because I can't tell when the geotech was done in relation to storm events and wet weather. Right now, I know it's wet, and I've got pictures proving where things are at. So he talks about pre-development, post-development. We did add the oil and grease skimmer and uploaded that. That's a detail that would, actually would have been addressed also at the Northwest Florida Water Management District ERP permit processing. And the rest of it is required. I mean, 1 inch of rain and the pre-post attenuation, and recovery. Those are all things that are dictated by groundwater table and the geotechnical report that we received.
And the applicant did send me pictures of the tape measure on the existing wet ponds within the golf garden area, and, it confirmed what the geotech sort of estimated as a range, as well as what the applicant used in their stormwater modeling. So I didn't see any issues with it, and he's exactly right. We've received an above average amount of rain recently, and so I feel, with all that being said, that and stormwater design's conservative anyway, because we have to use factors of safety, and it's all based on conservative assumptions. But the field data that he presented to me in response to some of these emails showed that the water table was relative to what the geotech report and his stormwater model said it was.
We can all walk out there this afternoon and look at it. It's no mystery here. As you get closer to the DOT ditch, that area is a little more tidally influenced. I know that the Mr. McDowell has taken pictures of other systems within the area, and the further you get away from these tidally influenced area, the higher the water table. Generally speaking, water still flows downhill. So we're extremely close to that DOT ditch, which outfalls into the bay. Water table there is a couple feet lower than what's even on the golf garden property. And we took pictures of that as well, and we uploaded it just to show you, like, within 100 feet, the water table is even lower.
Thank you. I have one additional comment related to safety and that DOT ditch. That's something that needs to be fenced.
We've addressed that in a subdivision in the last 6 months. That's a good question. And it's one of those things where it's almost like, why isn't the DOT protecting us from their ditch? But I don't have a problem, committing to the safety of the residents by fencing or providing some obstruction to folks falling in that ditch. I mean, the units themselves are about 100 feet away from that ditch. The parking is more like 25 feet away. So whether we use a hedgerow or some sort of, solid fencing, I don't know, but I get what you're saying.
We're likely to have kids in this
Yeah.
development. Be perceived as an attractive nuisance.
Sure.
If I were operating the development, I'd think I would want a fence there.
Okay.
Um,
No problem.
Thank you, sir. This is a major development. It's going to get a public hearing at PRB and Zoning Board of Adjustments, Planning Commission, and the BCC once it makes it through that. We will take the opportunity this morning to invite any technical questions from anyone from the audience. Anyone in the audience wish to ask a technical question about the Land Development Code compliance on this particular development? Yes, sir. Mr. McDowell, if you'll come to the podium, please.
I'm Jim McDowell. I live on Walton Way, real close to this development. Thanks, sir. I know you guys, especially, Mr. Carpenter just left a meeting this past week about, meeting with the community of Miramar Beach, and had some of the commissioners there to talk about our concerns. And I know you got hammered with the people around our neighborhood with the flooding that's going on. We we think this particular project is way too big for the properties there, and that it's going to cause a lot more flooding in the area than is currently done. But we've got, I'll be talking about some of the flooding. We have a couple other people who want to talk about flooding and be able to show, where it's going to be detrimental to our area. Well, this morning I brought 2 documents with me, and these are in your reports. One is a stormwater plan submitted by Corps of Engineers, and one is the geotechnical report that Corps of Engineers submitted with their application. In this particular report, on page, was it 3? Page 3, in the report, it states that the seasonal high water table for this particular property, after they've drilled holes. They hadn't just looked at it, they drilled holes down and augured down. They found water to be between 2 and 3 feet below the surface. And in their report, they state that the seasonal high water table is between 2 and 3 feet below the surface. Now, when you come to the stormwater plan, if you look in the plan, did you have, let's go to the slide 1, next slide. Next slide. The plan itself, it shows that the water table is supposed to be between that, and yet when you look at the developer's plans, the developer plans on the next slide, and they claim that the water table is at 7 feet. Ladies and gentlemen, this is 2 feet of water. That's how deep the water is below the ground. Now, the developer says that the water is now 5 feet below the ground. Nowhere in this report does it support that.
First sentence on the screen supports that.
Well,
Groundwater generally observed at depths ranging from approximately 2 feet to 8 feet at the time of drilling.
Seasonal high water table, which has what it has to be based on, is at between 2 and 3 feet. That's what it says in the report. And that does not meet the requirement. The requirement is that the water table must be separated from the bottom of their pond by 2 feet. It's impossible if you have the water table at 9 to 10 feet, that claiming the bottom of the pond is 10 feet, there's not enough separation. It does not meet the LDC code. I mean, they're the ones who supplied the technical data. We didn't do that. They went out and drilled holes and augured and found where the high water table is. And that's in their report as to where that water table is.
Mr. McDowell, those represent elevations.
I'm sorry?
The 8 feet and 7 feet represent elevations, and so the bottom of the pond
Correct.
is at elevation 10.
It's at 10?
That's 2 feet. 10 minus 2
Well, if you
would
take
be
8 feet, yeah, that is. But if you take 9 to 10 feet, that's on the geotechnical report, it does not meet it. If you just listen to what they say, yeah, it meets it. But there's not supported anywhere in their geotechnical report is that seasonal high water table supported. There's not one mention in here that the seasonal high water table is at 7 feet.
Let me try to explain a little better. So it says that the estimated seasonal high groundwater table will be at approximately 2 to 3 feet below the existing ground, highlighted.
Correct.
There. So that's 2 to 3 feet of elevation difference between the existing ground elevation. So the golf gardens itself is around 11, 10, it undulates because of the golf course or whatever. So
Correct.
if you subtract 2 or 3 feet from 10, you get 8 and 7.
Why do you subtract 2 or 3 feet from, the ground level is at 12 feet. Everything in this thing says the ground level is currently and will be at 12 feet. And at 12 feet, the level is, the water table is between 9 and 10 feet. It's
The new elevation is, everything is 12 and above.
nowhere it shows that.
On the topography.
You didn't supply a topograph anywhere on it. You didn't supply that on the thing.
I did, it's uploaded.
No, sir, it's not.
It has to be
There's not a topo map in there with a single, ground level of what the topographical is. We think that the water table, when the, Northwest Florida come down here and look at the data, all we can do is look at the data is what they said. And they said that the water level is less than the requirement for having a separation of 2 feet between the bottom of the pond and the other.
Well,
Yeah.
let me explain one thing here.
Yes, sir.
The ultimate compliance with our regulations requires them to get a permit
Yes, sir.
for their stormwater plan.
Correct.
The project cannot be commenced before that stormwater plan is approved.
Correct.
We cannot hold the project up waiting for that other agency to get a stormwater plan because that now violates state law.
Right.
That would be the Petronas Amendment. So the developer is saying that their plan will be compliant with the code. The county's engineer is saying he agrees with that, subject to them getting a permit from the Northwest Florida Water Management District. If they can't get that permit, they won't ever break ground.
What we don't understand is
But I
why.
can't hold this up based on what some third-party agency is saying that is not here in this hearing.
Well, why?
You understand that, where I am on
understand
that?
But what I don't understand is that Corps submitted this report. We didn't submit it.
I
This is
understand,
their
but-
report, and this is what their plan says, and they don't meet the code.
Sir, but you're not offering expert testimony unless you're a licensed engineer in the state of Florida.
Well, I'm just pointing out what's in their reports. That's all I'm doing.
Sure, and that's been duly noted. Do you have additional points you'd like to make?
Yes, sir, I got a whole bunch.
Uh,
I got a whole bunch. One of the things that they say at the post-development, water outflow cannot be greater than the pre-development. Well, not being an engineer, I can't go in there and look at how they made all the calculations. But I can show that there's some things in their calculations that cannot be correct. First of all, they have a pond in there that currently, this pond that's in there now, according to your environmental study, says that all the land around there, the golf course, is graded so that the water goes down into their pond. And your environmental report says that. This particular pond does not have an outflow into the wetlands. There's no flow into the wetlands from that pond, and very, very little way, maybe just on the slopes of some of the greens, will that water flow into the to the wetlands. We disagree very, very much with their calculations of where that the water pre-level water is. It can't possibly be correct. The golf course has 13 greens on it. The greens themselves are punched often so that they absorb water. They don't flow the water off as a normal fairway would. The very little water, it goes down into the ground and is not outflow or out. The course has sand traps. There hadn't been a sand trap yet that's let any water out of the sand trap. It goes down into the ground. So their calculations are absolutely not correct with how much water pre-development is going in. I know there's there are certain calculations that if you had a standard, lot somewhere that would calculate out, but this particular piece of property is unique, and the water does not flow out. Very, very little of this water flows out. So we think that their pre-development outflow calculations are absolutely not correct. Another part of that, here, this is a list from their submittal. It says, and how they calculated this pre-development water. Well, they show in there that, yes, there's some impervious surface. There's big pervious areas, a lot of grass green. They say there's no gravel area. They show us 0 gravel area. This particular piece of property has 26,000 square feet of cart path that is made out of gravel and sand that the water goes down through. It doesn't go off, it doesn't settle out, it goes down. And yet they claim that there's no, in their calculations, they don't take into account any of the gravel that's on this particular plot. And there's a significant amount of gravel on there.
That's a conservative assumption, because if they assume there was gravel area, then there would be more runoff in the precondition. So they.
Gravel doesn't let water go off.
It does certainly let some water flow off. It does not infiltrate all of it. We assign certain curve numbers to those.
To gravel areas? Why would they put 0 in here when they do have them?
It's conservative though, because if we put 10,000 square feet in there, we're gonna generate more preconditioned runoff. So the applicant has actually.
So you're
was
saying that the gravel gets more water off than grass does?
It lets more water run off than grass does, correct? And so,
I'd have to see that, all right.
I
Also,
mean, sir, we can give you a lesson on stormwater if you want to meet outside sometime, but.
no, but I've never seen gravel. I've got gravel driveway out there. No water flows out of my driveway onto the Walton County reach. They also assume that there's no pond on there.
So
There's a
also.
2.2 acre pond on this property that the water goes into. I just don't see why you can come up and have these calculations and not have them supported by the data.
Fair enough. I mean, we also use a unit hydrograph when we put these into the stormwater model, which accounts for depressional areas throughout the site. So you mentioned the sand traps and the bunkers and such. So, they use the higher shape factor on the hydrograph to account for some of that. It's all in the science.
Are you saying that they did
All
take
the
into
science.
account the greens and they took into account the pond that doesn't go off-site? All that water drains into the pipe. It doesn't outflow off-site. We talked to those people over there and it says that pond, as long as you keep under about 8 inches of rain in a short period of time, their pond will overflow. But there's no outfall into the wetlands currently on that property. So it can't possibly, be less than the calculations they make on the next slide. The calculations they make on that, on the pre-development outflow certainly can't be right. One of the things about the environmental report says that this particular pond that's on there serves as their retention pond, which again says that terrain and topography is sloped toward the pond so that the water all goes into that and does not go into the wetlands as a pre-development outflow. The applicant proposes to put a dry retention pond in there. Back to the fact that we don't think that this pond anywhere nearly meets the requirements of the LDC.
Could I ask you one question?
Yes, sir.
If this does work, would you believe that it met the requirements of the LDC?
If it
What
worked,
they proposed works.
If it worked.
Would you agree that that meets the requirements of the Land Development Code?
if it worked,
Okay, we
Which
have
is-
2 professionals here that are licensed in Florida, the applicant and the county's engineer.
yes, sir. Yeah, I see
Have
that.
any professional that has looked at this on your behalf?
No, sir, I hadn't. I just looked at the data.
Let's proceed with your presentation, but,
If they come up and their own data says that the water table is at 2 to 3 feet below, and they come up and they put the bottom of the pole right at that, it can't meet the code.
I know, but you just agreed with me that if what they proposed and what we're proposing to approve actually works, and they can get a permit from the Water Management District, then it will comply with the Land Development Code.
If it did, yes, I would, but I don't believe that my
Thank you.
conversation with the
Appreciate your
water
opinion.
people, it's not gonna pass, so.
No, but that's a conversation, and
Yeah.
that's hearsay for this purpose this morning, because they are not here.
Yeah.
And we don't have an engineer here refuting what these two engineers are saying they believe will work.
I think that the engineers have missed the fact that, their data does not meet what they submitted.
Yes, sir, and we'll accept the information you're offering as your
Good.
opinion if you could proceed with your presentation.
Good. Next slide, please. One thing about their pond is they've come up and every calculation they make in the system comes up and says this pond is going to be 2 feet deep. So it's all the permeation and all that's built into the system is going to be based on a pond that's 2 feet deep. If you look at their site plan, which they just submitted the latest revision of, the site plan shows that their outfall is going to top off at 11.2 feet instead of the 12 feet that the head of the pond is. That then would make this pond, since the pond bottom is at 10 feet, this is going to top off at 11.2 feet. That means the pond is only 1.2 feet deep, which makes all the calculations that they submitted incorrect. They can't possibly do that. But on their latest plan, they show that weir is going to pop off or let the water out of that reservoir at 11.2 feet and not, get up to the 12 feet that is planned for.
That's how we control the rate of discharge. We have to let it discharge. We can't let it fill up to 12 and overflow around the whole perimeter of the thing. We're directing the discharge towards the wetlands, and that's how we control the rate with the width of that. So he's proposing an 8-foot weir so that we can discharge less rate than the precondition. So, they could be 10, could be 6, could be 4, could be a type C or type E inlet, but this is what works for the model.
Do you disagree that if the weir at bottom is at 11.2 feet, that the pond is going to normally be at 2 feet like he proposes?
It will, because as it fills up, it's going to discharge through this 0.8 foot weir. That's how we're directing it, so that it doesn't discharge to the right of way in the front or the ditch to the north or west. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? We're telling it where to go, and that's how we control the rate. And the model's dynamic. You have to think about it as if you're pouring water in there and it's soaking in the ground as it's filling up. There's percolation and discharge. It's not just here's how much runoff, here's how much volume, and we meet it. It's a dynamic.
I don't see how the water can be let out at 11.2 feet and keep the pond at 2 feet.
I'll tell you what it is. Take a 1 gallon jug and fill it with water, and then just cut a slit in what elevation you want. And so that's what it's doing. As it's filling up, it's going to start pouring out to control it so that it doesn't exceed the 12. So the discharge is letting the stormwater out as we're receiving water so that we don't exceed the top elevation of our pond. That's the best way I
don't
can
see
explain
how
it.
that can be, but we'll let the NPDS, the DEP people decide that, okay? One of the things that the ponds themselves, this pond, back maybe 1,300 feet away from this particular pond they're putting in, is one at Bayview. And at Bayview, designed by Corps of Engineers, was supposed to empty out or be recovered within 72 hours. This particular pond here, though, is located just maybe a half a mile away at Tom Thumb. It's a dry retention pond behind there. And if you've ever been by that spot, that place is shallow, has a high water table like this, and it never dries up. Never does dry up.
I've never seen it flood the parking lot either.
No, I hadn't, because it drives back. If you drive this morning, like West did down to Mariner Boulevard down there, you'll see where all their water went. It overflowed that pond and went and flooded, back there behind the place. He's got some pictures of it if you'd like to see it. Next slide, please. 1,300 feet away by your GIS system was a pond that built by Corps engineers that also is supposed to be able to dry within 72 hours. Well, here's 2 pictures of that particular pond that I took 5 days after the last rain event, still half full. 8 days after that pond was filled, it still got water in it. It does not recede like it should. It was designed because there is a high water table in South Walton County that, you heard the other night about all the flooding that's going on down there, and all of it is because of the high water table. you know, is consistent with the seasonal high water table being at 9 to 10 feet instead of at 7 feet. Next slide. Okay. If you notice next door,
DOT pond?
it's not a DOT pond, but it was part of the DOT project. It's located right next door to the golf garden. This particular pond was used for storing dirt and all, and since they've put a finish there, the pond is filled up and is now filled up to the water table.
Stormwater for Highway 98?
No, sir, stormwater goes out the ditch. I don't see where the water comes in.
There's an overflow structure right there underneath the words golf garden.
Okay,
But
but it doesn't dry out, it stays at the water
It's
table.
a wet pond.
It's a wet
The
pond.
DOT ponds are always wet ponds.
Okay, if it's a wet pond, then it's supposed to go down to the water table, is that correct? How far down does it go? Should go down to the water table? That's another example that says the water table is very, very high in our area. One of the things, this particular project, we brought this up last time, is got 16 or 17.4 acres of impervious surface. If you make the calculations of that, the calculations show that about 750,000 gallons, or about 473,000 gallons of water after the first inch. We're not, okay, if he collects the first inch, then 473,000 gallons, or about 47 swimming pools per inch of water, are coming off of that particular impervious surface.
Are we still talking about stormwater?
Yes, sir.
Didn't we already agree that if what they proposed and what the either Water Management or DEP approves will be compliant with the Land Development Code, and that's a condition of this project?
We're not talking about necessarily the Land Development Code right this minute. We're talking about the effects of all this water on what we're getting ready to talk about later on with me and Mr. Wyrick.
All right,
We want
well,
to show how much water is coming off of there.
We don't have an unlimited amount of time for these questions. I mean, if this is a speech, that's one thing. You can submit your.
I'm
and I think you've
submitting
already
data, I'm
submitted
asking
this.
questions.
What additional questions do you have regarding technical compliance? And if you can speak to a particular part of the code, we'll get
I want
an answer.
to talk about the code says that this particular pond requires an oil and grease skimmer.
And you heard him say that that's been added to the plan.
It's not on the plan that's submitted today. I went through the latest plan they put last week on there, and there's no place in there that I can find that they put a skimmer in there. I don't see any mention of it.
All right, we'll take a moment to ask Ed exactly where that is.
I don't see how that was missed in some of the reviews that, you know, that.
No
it's
more
required.
editorial comments about this. This is your opportunity to ask specific questions, and we've got one on the
A
table.
specific question.
Um,
It has not been submitted that I can find.
Over a flume. And it's required by the Northwest Water Management.
Yes.
Should be on the plan.
Yes, you got it.
You don't have a whole
On
lot of
the
room
plan.
back there, you know, getting onto to the wetlands themselves to put any kind of structure.
Ed, please add
I don't know
that
what
to
the
the plan
structure
as a
is.
condition this morning. Thank you. Your next question, sir.
The Northwest District says that if a stormwater plan is going to include any part of the wetlands, it's got to be wholly owned by one person. If you look at the next slide, those wetlands that they're putting the water on back there are owned by multiple people. So that it cannot be, you know, the wetlands cannot be a part of their stormwater retention plans. Since at the last meeting, you told me that they were not required to send out letters, and they weren't required to have a meeting, which we still don't understand. I've asked you to please show me where they're not required to do a meeting and to do the mailing, which I notice they have sent out a mailing now that says, in their application, the application says you will have a meeting of the people within 300 feet, and you will send out letters.
No, it doesn't.
The application most certainly does say that.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Hi, Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Shipman. I'm right behind you. That's okay. Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Shipman for Botanic. The application is a generic form that the county gives out for major developments. If you'll look, it says that under infill projects, this is general commercial. We are not required to have a community meeting at this time. And to further clarify, letters were sent out to the
Within
neighbors.
last week, right?
They were for the conditional use hearing for the zoning board of adjustments. That's at the end of October.
Good. I'm glad to see the letters went out.
I would also like to just mention that the post office is somewhat difficult apparently. One lady called me to say, for the record, that she had to stand by her postal box to get her mail because the postman does not understand the certified mail can just be left in the box. So for anybody that has been received a notice that it's certified return receipt and that they would need a signature, you're not required to, but apparently the post office is requiring it for some reason. I'm going to go talk to them this week. Okay?
Great. I was glad to see on your portal that they had gone and sent these letters out. Because that, to me, we felt like the people that are going to be affected by this water in the wetlands should be notified. So we sent out a letter ourselves to these people and just let them know that there's going to be a lot of water coming that way, and they should be part of this meeting.
Yes, sir. And just to clarify for the public record, for this particular meeting at technical review, they are required to post a sign on the property. They are not required to send any letters to anyone. And because this is in general commercial, the Land Development Code does not require a community meeting.
Right. Well, we're going to
Now, for the
address
Zoning Board of Adjustments, that is a public hearing, and it is required that they send notices to folks within 300 feet of the parcel.
I noticed they did that.
And
That's
they
very
did, they
good.
have complied with that portion of the Land Development Code.
That's very good.
Thank you, sir.
We asked a question that says in the environmental report, there was a question there that says they wanted to have the developer include a calculation for secondary wetlands impact. Well, apparently I misunderstood that because she came back and said that they just wanted to know the 25 feet buffer, that's what they wanted to know how it was impacted. So we as a group went and decided we wanted to do an impact study also. On the next slide, these are the wetlands that particular project is going to dump into. This is on the golf garden and
That
the wetlands.
particular question related to impacts of the secondary wetland protection zone has to do with development impacts, not stormwater. It's not a stormwater question.
Well, it asks
It's
if you
not.
want to do impact on the wetlands.
Yes, but
and
that
that's
is
exactly what we
encroachment
wanted to
into
ask.
that 25-foot secondary wetland protection zone with any kind of development, sidewalk, corner of a building, that kind of thing.
We are very concerned about the wetlands that are back there, and we'll show you why in just a few minutes. These are the wetlands that they're going to dump the water into currently. These are nice, beautiful wetlands, just exactly what the wetlands are supposed to be. If you go to the west of these wetlands, that particular wetlands, they dump over into the FDOT ditch. If you look at this, coming across, these are the water coming out of the wetlands. It goes under a park bridge and directly over into the DOT ditch with essentially no attenuation whatsoever. And then that particular ditch, your next slide, that particular ditch is well known of silting in and all this water coming down there. This ditch was put in there to get the water off of Highway 98. It was not necessarily put in there for people to go and dump their water problems into the ditch. It will be, if it's within maybe a couple hundred feet, their outflow into the wetlands, it's going directly over into the ditch. Part of it's going to the east, part of it's going to the west. But that particular ditch is already silted in. A lot of the places I fish, my house is just to the north of this and just to the west of this. And we used to fish in these areas now, but they're covered up with sand now and it's killed all the grass, kill the oysters, kill the fish. Next slide. Next slide. When you go to the west, to the east, these particular wetlands dump out water onto North Holiday Road. On the left is the outlet where that water comes out. The water then goes down North Holiday Road. It then goes south, goes north on Holiday Road, and then it turns left onto Shore Drive. During this last storm, that particular Shore Drive is just covered in water. Mr. Wyatt's going to talk in a minute when some of these slides show his house, on there being flooded. And what we're saying is this particular water that's going to dump in 500,000 gallons of water for every inch of rain. After the first inch, we'll give it the first inch, is going to dump that water into the wetlands. Why are you shaking your head, Bill?
Because that's not correct. You don't understand stormwater. That's not correct. It's not dumping 500,000 gallons into it. Matter of fact, it's actually going to enhance and better the situation because currently the golf course uses who knows how much fertilizer that's running off into your wetlands.
Right.
The golf course itself
I'm glad you brought that up.
The golf course itself doesn't have a 25-foot wetland buffer. You saw by your picture, they mow right up to the edge of the water.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're going to have a 25-foot buffer there. That's even better. And then the same thing, we're going to have less discharge in the post condition than we are in the precondition. So we're essentially going to make this situation better. That's why I was shaking my head.
You mean the 3 million gallons of water that came down this past Sunday will just stay on site and not go into the wetlands?
We contain and will retain and attenuate our stormwater, which is going to better the situation because what we propose to discharge is less than what you're getting right now. All this other stormwater comes from all over the place. I do agree. And I think the applicant wants to speak to it, but that's why I was shaking my head.
Well, this has been an issue. I mean, this is a question, but this is a macro question. This is not a golf garden question. This issue with the plume of sediment that's coming out of the DOT ditch, we've talked about this for 3 years. We've talked about the stormwater issues on North Holiday. That is not a golf garden issue. That is a big macro issue that needs somebody's attention that's bigger and better and stronger than we are. We are addressing our local issues with our state designed, Walton County designed stormwater system. So I can't disagree with you that you've got an issue there. But ever since we started on this project and we met with you, we met with the community when we were going through the land use change, and we discussed this, and we met with the county. We met with the county to address and voice your concerns regarding your stormwater issues, your flooding issues, your sidewalk issues, and your traffic issues. So this is nothing new, but this is not a golf garden, dictated or promulgated situation. This is something that is a big picture item that the DOT may need to get involved to maintain and correct this deficiency.
Do you think it's okay for you to dump all this water over in the DOT ditch? That's okay?
I believe that we are meeting the requirements of the state law. So, I mean, is that okay? Do you drive at 55?
Do you agree that the state law requires that you will not adversely affect the water when you dump water into other places? When you dump water off the site, you can't affect adversely other people's property?
Mr. McDowell, can you direct your questions to the dais? Do you have any more questions?
Yes, sir, I sure do.
Because we need to finish this up pretty quickly here. You got about 10 minutes.
Good. I should be able to. Next slide shows flooding along the bay, along Shore Drive over there. Next slide. It should be, can you see it? This particular was on Nextdoor this week of showing when you put water into those wetlands, the wetlands are flowing into the back of the subdivisions there along Walton Way and Shore Drive. Here's the flooding that's going on now, and we feel like all this water coming on there is exasperating this particular problem over there. Now we're going to get into a couple of environmental questions. The pond itself is designated, next slide, is designated to be filled in. In order to meet the ground requirements for being able to support this building, they got to fill this pond in. The geotechnical report says that they must fill it in and they must grab the muck that's at the bottom of that. We've got a question that says, these ponds, I don't know if any of y'all are fishermen, but if you ever go and catch fish out of a golf pond, you don't eat them because it's full of pesticides and herbicides, and those, you throw them back because they might kill you. Well, we want to know where they're going to pump all this water that's coming out of that pond. That particular water is full of herbicides and pesticides. We talked to the people at DEP or Northwest Florida Water and said, you know, where are they going to pump the water? And they told us to ask a question of the developer is, have you done a pollution loading analysis for this particular pond and the muck on the bottom of the pond? And the review came back and said, no, we don't need to do that. The water's okay. Well, we don't think the water's okay. We think it needs to be tested before you allow any of that water to be pumped back into the wetlands, because if it has herbicides in there, the herbicides will kill the wetlands. We got an answer back that says we don't need to do a water analysis over there.
Do you understand that water from those ponds is used to irrigate the golf course?
They don't irrigate. They have a well they did the water from.
Oh, no, sir. They use those ponds to irrigate the golf course.
Well,
because South Walton Utilities provides effluent into those ponds by agreement.
no, sir, they don't put it into the golf garden. They do not. They do into Emerald Bay, and they do into Regatta Bay. They do not dump water into golf gardens.
They have a permit to dump water into the golf garden ponds. I just met with them last month about how we are going to adjust, or how they are going to adjust their effluent program because of this project. So
Okay.
we're working with them.
Yes, and that agreement applies to the 10 acres north also. And that was part of the closing documents, and that's an existing agreement between the property owner and South Walton Utilities to use effluent to water the grass at the golf cart.
Well, I'd have to talk to the golf cart and see if they're using it, because I don't think they are. But, because I think they've got a well that they get the water out of.
Also have that. They have a shallow well.
Yep.
Yes, they do.
Another thing about the geotechnical report says that they have to get the muck out of the bottom of this pond. This pond has been there for 30 years, serving as a retention pond. Over those 30 years, we believe it could have collected pesticides, herbicides, enough so that it could be considered a toxic waste site. That's another reason we asked them to do a water testing analysis on the muck and all, but they said they don't need to. We want to make sure that particular testing gets done so that they know how to properly handle that muck when it comes out. We don't want that dumping in other parts of the county or wherever they might want to use it. Another thing that their geotechnical report is, it says, as they're digging this pond out, because of the high water table, they can expect groundwater to fill in as they're digging this in. And they're going to have to de-water that pond. What we want to know is, what are they going to do with this dirty, silty, muddy water? Where are they going to pump it? They don't have enough land to put in a collection pond. They don't have any way that they can go and collect this water. So we want to know where they're going to dump this water and how they're going to treat that water before, obviously, they're going to want to dump it into the wetlands. But they haven't, there's no way in there that they can have the water, what they can do with the water. Full scale. Let's go to the last part. I just go to my last part and make a conclusion. This past week, you heard the citizens of this county with utter dismay about the flooding in South Walton. We are tired of developers coming in here, destroying our homes and our ways of life with wild developments that put profits ahead of proper development. To stop developers misleading you, to try to help this, we need to have developers stop misleading you with incorrect numbers about the outflows. We don't think their outflows are correct. The project covers way too much pervious surface for this particular piece of property. Well, one suggestion we might have, instead of putting in 593 parking places with 17 acres of pervious surface. Have them do it right and come in and put a parking garage in there. You cut way down the pervious surface and have it to where not as much water is going to affect our way of life. Make sure that the numbers for the southwest, for the seasonal high water table on a project like this are correct and not just grabbed out of the air. The flooding last week shouldn't be further exacerbated by this particular development. The ditch should not be a continuing dumping ground for water problems by developers. By going and putting this into the water system, they're increasing the flow of that DOT ditch and increasing the silt that's going into Chautauqua Bay, which is, ruining the bay. We ask that you disapprove this project and revise it to meet LDC codes with the NPDES requirements for the outflows. That's what I got.
Thank you, sir. Do we have anyone else that wishes to ask a technical question? And I'm going to limit it to technical question, not editorial comments, and I just don't like this. There'll be plenty of time for those comments at future hearings.
Fair enough.
Specific technical questions.
Here, I think you'll like this then, Mac. Okay. So this is, my name is Steve Young. I live at 620 Walton Way. I'm heavy into this Chautauqua Basin Alliance, so I care about the environment, right? I'm a water monitor. I'm an oyster gardener right down from this. And now I'm on the board, and now I'm the chair. So hey, I do my part to make the bay a better place.
Thank you, sir, for your service.
You're welcome. Now, I only have 2 slides, okay? First slide here is just to show what the technical concerns are and, is the developer addressing them. Jim did a good job of explaining it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on any of these. The next slide is my questions, okay? First one is about that toxic sludge, right? That I think is a really big deal and how we deal with that, obviously, with my background. The water table, I'll ask the question, on it, but, there's empirical proof that we have, in the core report that I think need to be addressed. Also, I'll have a question on the inflow and outflow. The oil and grease skimmer, you guys have addressed that one, so that one looks like it's there. And yes, I'm the one who asked the safety question, and this is the second time that's come up, and I'll bring that up here. So now we can go to the second slide, which is my question, which are the questions. So the first question, to put it in a question format, will you require the developer to perform a pollution loading test on the sludge in the bottom of those ponds? I think you should. So, and as a developer, if you guys don't do that, I think that is, anyways, deplorable, because we don't know what's in that sludge. Is there a high probability that there are toxins in there with the herbicides and the pesticides? Absolutely.
DEP would regulate that. We don't have anything in our code, and I do agree with you, but I believe the DEP would regulate filling in the
DEP regulates it, but if it's not in the plan or anything, shouldn't it be in the plan? Just that we're going to do this as part of their plan. I would ask you guys to require that as part of the plan, to say you're going to run the test and make the results available to the public. I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
If I may, in response to his question, again, Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Shipman. Obviously, the engineering company and the client will do whatever DEP requires. When you say in the plan, if I may direct it to you, you're asking why we don't submit that to the Walton County Planning Department?
Yes.
Because it's not required by the code. So it will be done.
Just because it's not required to the code doesn't mean that it's not right. Okay, and is anybody I've developed?
You're making the assumption, sir, if I may, that we're doing something that's wrong, or that we are not going to do what's right. DEP requires it, it will be submitted. That was the response I wanted to give.
I guess here's part of my thing to you is there's a minimum standard that can be met, right? But as a good corporate citizen, there are other things that we do that are over the baseline, the absolute minimum standard. I think this is one of those. I'll move on, but that's.
Let me just speak to that. We can make a recommendation. I cannot require it because the Land Development Code does not require it, and we have to be consistent from applicant to applicant, requiring the same level of compliance. I can't go and pick this applicant and say, you need to do 10 times what this applicant needs to do to meet the same part of the code.
Mac,
We will make a recommendation.
Perfect. That's what thank you for you helped me out with the language, right? So yes, instead of a requirement that you will make that suggestion or request, absolutely is the right way to go. And appreciate that you're going to add that in there. Now, and also as part of that request, I would hit point number 2, that when they find it, that they actually, depending on the results, dispose of it properly per the DEP and the EPA regulations. I think that's fair. So is
Again,
that
it's also
something, would
required
you
that we do
also
what's
put that in as part of the request that?
I think that would be required by the DEP, and so we'll add that language that if required by the DEP, we recommend that it be.
Absolutely, that's what I'm
properly
asking for. Thank you. Appreciate you putting that in. On the geotechnical report and the water table, there is some question as to where the water table is. We've got some really strong empirical evidence that shows where the water table is. Here's the point I was gonna make on this. The Golf Garden right now, if you listen to the Golf Garden people, they can handle 6 inches of our big time rains that we got last week, which actually in our area was 9. At least 6 of it, they can currently hold that without the ponds overflowing into the wetlands, okay? When you cover that with 68% or whatever the number is of impervious bit, you're not going to be able to retain near as much. Yes, they are currently retaining more water than what the county requires, but when we go into the development, now there's a whole bunch of water that used to be able to be retained isn't going to. I mean, that's just common sense. If you've got a big body that's, doesn't have that much impervious on it, and then you fill it with, and it'll handle 6 inches easy, then if you make it 68% impervious, it is going to, that water's going to dump someplace. And so there's 2 things. The water will dump someplace, and it's going to get there quicker, right? There's a retention time is the other thing. The faster that the water moves, the more, hydrocarbons from the parking lot and all that stuff goes with it, right? So my question is, will you take another look at the geotechnical report and the provide substantiated data for your water table? Because I don't think you're not given a substantiated data to make your decisions on. We have the geotechnical report, but you're using this other stuff. It's kind of more hearsay. So we're asking is, will you give us substantiated data to show where the water table is?
I will. I mean, that's why I took pictures. That's why I've been out there during and after rain events with tape measures. I took pictures yesterday. I'll do it today. The pond elevation is the absolute most visible and verifiable seasonal high groundwater table right now because we've been in a wet season this last 60 days.
And ponds.
So it's even better than the geotech, to be honest with you. There's no guessing here.
Let's do that and make that.
It has been done, and I'll do it again. I mean, that's
do it
that's
again
not an
because
issue.
it's you've got a lot of citizens, and what we're seeing isn't really jiving with what you're saying.
Well, I see where you took pictures out there.
He has taken pictures of that pond elevation and submitted that to the county, and that's available.
And you took your own pictures out there, so
That's-
it's easy to take a tape measure out there and measure down to the water.
Okay. So, my next question. Okay. Now here, and this is especially bothersome to me, is about the fence. Now, Mac, I'm the one who wrote the email, asking why we don't have a fence.
Didn't we get a commitment from the developer
It
earlier
did, but
in the meeting?
here's my thing. Here's my additional point. for Bayview Estates, which runs alongside the ditch, right? This is a citizen, what bothers me, where I'm not really sure that they're gonna do it.
Cannot talk about Bayview Estates here this morning. We
They-
have to talk about Botanic.
Yeah, well, they didn't put a fence in, and that the commissioners, remember, they required, asked you to ask the developer to do it. We'll see if he will or not. To me, that's just not the way to do business when the safety of our
No,
children are
he's
there.
made the commitment. We'll make that a condition of the approval.
Make
We've
it a-
already addressed the fence.
All right, then here's my thing. Make it a condition of approval, but a hedge isn't gonna keep the kids out. It's gonna have to be a actual fence.
Mr. Young,
not
we've
a-
already agreed. Thank you.
Okay, then we're good on that one. But those are the things that, we'd think there's enough here not to make it go forwards. So those are my comments and my questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. And if you would, please keep this brief and don't repeat those questions that have already been addressed.
Yes, sir. Could you put up
Got new questions? Let's hear those.
Yes, sir. Wes Warwick. I'm Holiday Shores Estates, 582 Shore Drive, and just want to go back, like you were saying, for the macro questions. This thing could put up the first one. I'm going back to the land development, to the environmental protection handbook for application of this thing, and just citing the reasonable assurance that out of the manual it says. 2.02 will not cause adverse water quality impacts to receiving waters in adjacent lands, will not cause adverse flooding to on-site or off-site property, will not cause adverse impacts to existing or surface water storage or conveyance, and will not cause adverse secondary impacts to water resources or otherwise adversely impact maintenance of surface or groundwater levels or surface water flows. This last week has demonstrated graphically on Monday of what happens in our neighborhood. And Jim has gone through it and talked about the conveyance issue. This is coming right out of the wetlands adjacent to the Golf Gardens property. And one of the things that's not considered, and I know it's not an engineering thing, but it's an empirical thing, we're getting literally tons and tons of water coming off the wetlands. And talking to Charlie Cotton from engineering over at Public Works, great guy, the general flow right now is from 98. What water is coming to the north, and on this property in particular, they're planning on diverting it out to the northwest. But that's not actually what's happening in our neighborhood, and I've got slides to show that. The water for that entire 98 is being more developed. Our drainage is getting worse, and we're flooding more. And this is coming out of the wetlands. We've got natural springs out there, and I can show those slides on either side of Holiday, all the way down into Golf Gardens. That water is all coming down to our neighborhood, and it's getting worse and worse. This is what happens. This is a little over a week ago. This is what happens at the Hagen Park is there. And what's not being considered, underneath our whole development on both sides of this thing, we've got a hard pack that goes down somewhere between 6 and 8 feet just based on putting poles into the bay. And I've talked to the engineers. They said that you can't really say exactly where it is because it's localized between construction debris, natural barriers, and man-made barriers, including the streets of Forest Shore, Holiday, and these baffle boxes. Here's another classic case. If you look at, well, slides further down, of the stuff they're putting in is impeding water flow going out and causing part of our flooding issue. So next slide, please. This is what's going on right now. These slides are last week, and I've got ones that came from 2 days ago. See the water hydrant there? Immediately to the south of that is our sewage pumping station, which is overflowing with water. Right there, this lot is right next to mine. The water is not going down the swale. It's going underground and coming up through his yard. That's exactly what's happening on the property immediately adjacent to the Golf Garden property. Commissioner Johns.
Are these adjacent to the Golf Garden?
No, this is
How far away is this?
This is a block, city block. Next slide. Here's the other side of Shore, flooded out on both sides. Next slide. This is Forest. Excuse me. That's there's a pumping station underwater, sewage pumping. Next slide. This is Hagen Park, and there's water in. The difference between the water in and water out, about 2.5 to 3 feet. 2 days ago, I went out and drove our neighborhood with one of the engineers from Public Works. Went through and looked at Hagen Park. This push, this water's coming down, this is all coming out of the wetlands. The Hagen Park impermeable seawall has been pushed out about 10 degrees from underground flow, pushing that seawall out. Same thing on the water coming out. If you'll notice on the right there, see the underground flow there? That's underwater. The swale is not taking the water. Next slide. This is the outflow coming directly out of the wetlands that's adjacent to this property. I've been by there the last 2 days. This thing looks like a fire hose, pushing so much water out of the wetlands into Holiday Road and going down. So this is directly coming out of those natural springs and the overflow of that. Next slide.
We are up about 20 inches above your
Well,
rainfall.
just to talk about localized flooding, Eglin got 2.6 inches. That's what they had. Talking to Chance Powell yesterday, they got between 4 and 8 a.m. They had roughly 6 inches in one place, about 7.2 in another. We've had reports of 9 inches. But there's a variation in there. And what I'm trying to point out, what this is going on, we don't have flooding in general. We have localized flooding, but it's all coming from the same direction. It's all coming from the south going north for Long Lake. Commissioner Johns, you already saw her backyard. That pond reached out and got all the houses around there. Next slide.
Pond in her subdivision?
Yes, it is. Next slide. This is, I have these only up here for one reason. These are 72-hour storm drains. These are filled 11 out of 12 months. The water table on these dry retention ditches, stormwater, don't work. That's where the water table is always filled. Next. Let's keep on going. This is the same one going out. Oh, the pond overflow. The swale is totally dry. The pond's totally silted out. Hadn't been maintained by the county. This one shows about a 3-foot difference. And this is an impediment for the water going out, coming down. Keep going. Next slide. Okay, that's out. When we drove this with the engineer, they saw the outflow. One home on 682 Shore Drive this week, specifically driven or built county swale from Forest Shore down to shore, flooded their house. They had 2 inches of water inside, sandbags, 2 pumps going, and nothing happened. Also, just to, since you're talking about technical questions, I've got a photo on my phone for the notification for this meeting for the people back in Long Lake. The sign's about 20 to 30 feet in the woods with tree limbs hanging right over it, so the residents didn't know about the meeting today. So Mariner Way, the top of Holiday, where the stormwater comes in, Mariner Way, Hidden Harbor, on Monday, totally flooded out. Drove in there, the water was coming up past my windows when I drove through, splashing up. Still flooded today. In closing, just for this last event, this wasn't a 25-year event. This wasn't a tropical storm. This wasn't a hurricane. I figured about 7.2 inches was what Chance gave me. That turned out to be 2.9 million gallons if they take this development. That's a hard surface with only 15 acres, rounded down. 2.9 million gallons of extra water will be put into the system. And my question is, how can you say this won't affect our property? That's all I've got.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. Come to the podium, state your name for the record. Please don't repeat anything that's been asked and answered
Don't
already.
repeat anything, good Lord.
New questions.
God, I'm Lori Eccles, and I'm at 368 Shore Drive, and I'm not even going to talk about the water because it's been said enough. And I'm going to be as technical as I can be because I'm not a technical person. I'm just a tax-paying citizen. So.
What can we answer for?
Well, I know y'all went to school, and I think that's great. But I know that if you take a green space, especially a golf course that is made to hold water and drain water, and you fill it in with concrete, that when that rain falls, that rain still has to go somewhere. So where's the rain gonna go? If it isn't going in the concrete. It obviously isn't gonna go in the parking lots, which is a whole other thing I'm gonna talk technically about in a minute. But where's the water gonna go? We have one piece of property left in Miramar Beach. That's that golf garden property, because y'all already have given other people across from the golf garden an opportunity to build. So that's a whole other story, because you've already approved that behind Long Lake Drive. Yeah, it hadn't been that long ago. So anyway, when they put that road down there going into our neighborhood, And, because that's what's gonna happen when they build that Driftwood Road off of Highway 98 that's going to accommodate the Botanic, which that's a bad name, y'all ain't nothing botanical about y'all. But anyway, you're gonna have this road that comes down between this wet lake over here on the right and this new subdivision that's gonna be over on the right. And then you're gonna have all of this,
Lori, can you speak into the microphone so we can get your
I'm sorry,
comments on
nobody's
record,
ever
please?
not been able to hear me. But anyway, so you're gonna have all that space on the front for a gas station and all of that stuff on the front. Then you're gonna drive back into basically an apartment complex that has, 321 apartments and only 590 parking places, and you can bet your butt you're gonna have more than 2 cars per apartment complex. Probably 3 in a lot of cases, especially if you're going to want this workforce housing or affordable housing, affordable luxury apartments, I love that. But where are all these people gonna park, number one? So you're gonna have people off of 98 coming into the gas station. You're gonna have people doing this. All this water on 98 obviously is gonna run down the road because there's no grass that's gonna be getting it anymore. Because it's gonna be concrete. Then you're gonna have concrete against concrete. And all these people coming in and out, you're bringing close to 900 extra people into that little area at one time. Is that technical? I don't know, you're looking at me.
I'm waiting for your question.
Okay. I'll ask a technical question. You have 1.92 acres designed in that area for a pool and 4 grills. Is that the only amenity that you have for 700 people? Because we don't have anything else for them to do in Miramar Beach. So where is this gonna be? I mean, are y'all not thinking anything about this? You got 700 people you're gonna run into just a few acres.
25
So anyway, that's my one thing. The second thing is you're gonna have a car wash on there because it says you're gonna have a car wash. Is this a big car wash or is this a car washing station? So just saying. But I just don't understand. I don't understand a lot of things. I don't understand while I was at a meeting last week for codes because they're asking for a variance to not build what they've got in their plan. They're wanting something on it. And then that was continued till the 28th, and now I find out yesterday there's this meeting today.
Yes,
And-
ma'am. We're talking about the technical compliance with the Land Development Code today. At the Zoning Board of Adjustments, they will be asking for conditional approval to be able to build apartments, and that is conditioned upon providing 20% workforce housing.
Well,
That's the
If you're gonna
conditional
build a-
use approval that they'll be asking for at Zoning Board of Adjustment. Let us build apartments, and we agree to provide whatever the code requires for workforce housing. That's the question at Zoning Board of Adjustments, not whether or not the project can be approved or not, because they're not being asked to approve the project. The Board of County Commissioners will ultimately be asked to give final approval of the project.
have the people building this, okay, let me ask this, see if this is technical. Have the people that are building this property, have they bought the property? Do they own the property? Or are we just sitting here doing all this for them?
I believe they're under contract, subject to getting a development order. And that's a very common method of development throughout our country, where a developer will contract to purchase a piece of property, subject to being able to get the approval for what their end use.
Is the person that is doing the plan for the apartment complex here today?
Architect?
Yeah.
I don't think the architect is here. The owner is here, though, if you'd like. You have a
The
question
owner
for
of
him?
what?
Developer.
Oh, are you it?
I'm not.
You are.
My name is Fred Hazel.
Well, hi there, Fred. How you doing? I'm Lori. It's so nice to meet you. Here's what you need to do. You need to have more parking places.
I need to.
Oh, oh.
I'm
Well,
sure
I
he'd-
guess I'm done.
I'm sure he'd be happy to talk with you after the meeting this morning if you have.
But I'm just gonna say one thing, and it's gonna be really quick. For all you people who've had to listen to all this crap this morning about Miramar Beach, that's the last piece of property we have in our county, in our little part of Miramar Beach. We're a 40 and 50-year-old development back behind where they're wanting to build an apartment complex. That's our passion. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for a way to be able to not have every bit of that water that's coming off of this thing come down into flood our houses and our yards. We're tired of it. We're plain freaking tired of it.
I think
I'm
that,
done.
thank you, Lori. And just for the record, the applicant has proposed a stormwater plan that is compliant with the Land Development Code. Our engineers have reviewed that. I mean, it's subject to permitting by an outside agency. We are unable to hold this project up pending approval of that outside agency permit. The project, if it does ultimately get approved, will be conditioned upon successfully permitting through those outside agencies before any construction can commence. Certain of the things that have been raised today may be state requirements to be addressed in the state permitting process, but state law prevents us from holding up our approval if we believe it complies with the Land Development Code. We can condition it to obtain those outside agency permits prior to construction commencing, but we cannot hold the approval waiting for those permits. State law does not allow us that opportunity. We are absolutely concerned about flooding in Miramar. We haven't had this kind of rain and high groundwater since about 2014, where it flooded on the top of hills in flood zone X. In places in my lifetime, I've never seen flooding before. We had flooding on the top of Blue Mountain. And I've got flooding in my yard. I've got water standing in my yard for about 3 weeks, and my yard drains to the street. But there's so much water coming down now that we have water standing everywhere. We have a large number of areas that have been pumping in the last few weeks. And we got some more water coming. October is normally the driest month of the year, but not this year. We appreciate everybody's questions and comments this morning. Do we have anyone else that wishes to ask a technical question about compliance with the Land Development Code and this particular application? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of the meeting. And subject to the conditions, I'm sorry, would you like to offer anything in rebuttal to any of the questions or comments? We'll provide you that opportunity.
Only to say that we're aware of the bigger picture issues and have been in conversations with the county commissioners and the residents over the last several years. We're sensitive to those things, but at the same time, we will meet the requirements of the Walton County Land Development Code and the state requirements for the project. So this, as you recall, this property was for sale prior to being contracted, and the county did look at it. And I talked with some of the commissioners about even a regional stormwater management facility to address some of these flooding issues that could be potentially located on the property to the east of the Golf Garden Botanic property. So it's not that we're not sensitive to it, and I've tried to provide the visual evidence of in response to some of the questions regarding groundwater table, et cetera. Whatever the outstanding, the outstanding comments, we'll address those. I apologize, but I may have even plotted the older version without the note regarding the skimmer, and I apologize for that. No matter what, that will be uploaded within hours if it's not already done. everything else regarding questions of toxicity in the sludge, and this is a managed golf course. It already is under the scrutiny of the state, and they get licensed every year for doing this. So whatever the requirements are regarding those ponds and the filling of those ponds, we will meet those requirements.
Thanks, sir. Tim, do we have a recommended motion?
Depends on whether you want to move it out of the TRC with the floodplain comments still unresolved.
Given that none of these questions impact the question before the Zoning Board of Adjustment that's coming up as the next step in this process, I'm going to suggest we continue this to the next meeting, which will be after Zoning Board of Adjustments and before ZBA. I think we're planning to, has this one been scheduled for ZBA yet?
28th?
I mean, not ZBA, DRB, Design Review Board.
Yes, it's scheduled for tomorrow, but we're continuing it to the November 4th meeting. Next TRC meeting after the ZBA would be the November 3rd TRC meeting.
Mac, may I ask a question before you make full determination? Okay. The item will be heard before the Zoning Board of Adjustments on October the 28th, the DRB on November the 4th. And the question about the flood comment is not, is a question about the language in the code that is very specific to how this proceeds. What we would like to, because it's a question that is an interpretative question, is not a technical question reviewed by, say, Dewberry and so forth, what we would like to do is move out of TRC, move on to the Zoning Board of Adjustments, not move forward to the Planning Commission until we can resolve the floodplain question. Because this is a question of whether or not FEMA agrees with our interpretation, and that potentially could work into the interpretation of that particular language. It is not whether or not technically this plan, because if they don't agree, we have to convert and do what we have to do. So in which case, if that occurs, if we cannot come to compliance based on FEMA's interpretation, then we would have to resubmit, and that would bring us back to TRC anyway. So we would like to get a motion to move out, conditioned upon them being able to resolve the FEMA question, otherwise to be brought back later if necessary. Thank you.
So just to clarify then, I think to help back to, based on the elevations from the survey, from the existing conditions, you're asking FEMA for a letter of map revision based on those elevations?
So we had a meeting about this because it's sort of a chicken egg situation.
Correct.
And multiple times over, and we won't start that conversation over again right now. But in particular, our question to FEMA is to recognize that they are man-made golf garden ponds,
Right.
and not flood zones as as they appear, and that we understand that we have to do the permitting, but we can't do the permitting without the approval, and so on and so forth, and it's sort of that. And we need something, truthfully, we need FEMA to look at that and go, yes, we understand that that's what it is, because Northwest Florida Water Management did give us that letter. They said, these are man-made ponds, it's not an impact, we understand you're gonna fill them. And we're trying to get that from FEMA to suggest that this is what this is, because the code doesn't give you any kind of exemption for a man-made pond.
Understood.
Thank you.
I'm comfortable with that condition. Would also, if we entertain a motion to conditionally approve this subject to satisfaction of outstanding comments, that will address the FEMA condition. I'd also like to add a recommendation for the pollution loading test as recommended by the Water Management District or FDEP, and the appropriate treatment of any sediment as they direct. We also have the commitment to place the fence along the mosquito control ditch. We'll add that as an additional commitment in the conditions. And if we entertain this motion, that would, the project's still subject to ZBA this month. We would still go to DRB. I think November 4th. And then before we go to Planning Commission, we have these other conditions resolved. But that keeps the project on schedule for ZBA and the Design Review Board, and provides an opportunity to resolve these comments. So we'll entertain a motion to that.
Without trying to restate all that, I'll motion as mentioned by the chair.
We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved to move forward to the Zoning Board of Adjustments and the other schedule. I think our next item,
I'll see y'all at the next meeting. I can't wait. Looking forward to it.
all right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 11. This is the Chautauqua Solar Energy Facility. This is a request to approve by development order. Renee has reviewed their resubmittal. Renee, if you could introduce it for us.
Yes, sir. This is a minor development order application submitted by the Planning Collaborative on behalf of Gulf Power. They're requesting to develop a solar energy facility on 867.88 acres with a future land use and zoning of large scale and general ag. The property is located off Brown Road and is also in by the District 2 Road Office. Staff would like to enter the staff report into the record, sir.
So entered.
We've come a long ways with this project since our last TRC meeting. I would like to hand out to the chair discussion of agreement.
Oh, sure.
So what we've, basically where we're at with this now, sir, is just a couple of properties in which we had some buffer requirements that we thought was more than what Gulf Power was suggesting. We've had them meet with some of the homeowners out there and go over this. We seem to be coming to some type of agreement. This is a verbal agreement, but what I can see on the plans, looks like they're trying to meet what the hearings requests are on this. Second, also, I asked them to go meet with the other two properties in which I had looked at, which there's three, to see if they could increase their buffering around those properties. Miss Ashburn's property, for one, I was concerned that there was only a 25-foot setback. I'd asked them to go meet with her and see if they could give her some additional landscaping to help for the view of that. It's my understanding they have done this. And they haven't gotten a response from Miss Ashburn, whether she's, happy with what they're suggesting to do. Also, we have gotten an email from Mr. King, which says he's good with the buffering that he has out there. So there was one more property which I have not had any comment from, but they have reached out to them out there to see if they could do anything beyond just a 25-foot setback for that property. As far as we did have, Tony Roy went out or actually did a review. We did get that in the staff report at the last minute. Other than that, we had a couple of comments from environmental in which were related to these three properties. So we are trying to get the neighborhood happy with what Gulf Power is proposing. Unless you have further questions of me, I would turn this over to Gulf Power.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you push the button up.
Aye, yeah, obviously. Very briefly, as Renee said, we did take an opportunity to go meet with the neighbors, and I think that the project is in good shape now. We've added we're going to add some additional vegetation for Mrs. Ashburn, and I think we've satisfied the other neighbors. So I don't know if you need anything else from us today, but I think we're in good shape, and we've talked to the Herrings extensively. And as she provided the list, I think we've been able to satisfy that list, and we'll hear from them today, but I hope we're in good shape.
Thank you, sir, and we appreciate your efforts to work with the neighbors. Do we have anyone here that wishes to speak on this particular project? Yes, ma'am. If you'd come to the podium and state your name and spell your last name for the record, please. Even though I think we know it.
I think you know me. Dorothy Herring. First, I'd like to thank Gulf Power and their attorneys. After our county commissioners agreed to their agreement, they were willing to come back and do more and work with us, and we do appreciate it. So I want to say that first, so they know we do appreciate them. Okay, and I've shared this with Brandon already. We've talked this morning. In the buffers that's in the plans, they are going to submit holly in 5 different kinds. Well, in our area, we have livestock and, cows. Plus, we produce hay that these holly limbs, bushes, have leaves that have sharp little prongs on them. And we think that would be detrimental to the livestock in the area because the buffers are going to be close to where there'll be horses, grazing. We have a hay field right next to one of those, and we cut hay off of this field. So these leaves that blow in would get into the hay, and then we would sell it, and it spread all over the county. A lot of you guys know when you do vegetables, we should take our pea hulls, and we feed our pea hulls to our cows, but we don't do butterbean hulls because they have a little sharp thorn on the end of the butterbean, and that can cause a lot of damage to livestock. But Brandon and them have agreed this morning, we talked about it this morning, they've agreed to remove the holly from the buffer.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
Okay, the other thing was, we talked about it, and I think it was written on the plans that it said that the plants would only be warranted for a year. But according to the Land Development Code, it says that they will be maintained in a healthy condition. And Brandon and I have discussed that this morning also, and they've agreed to comply with what the code said. And the code number was 5.01.08, and I do have some copies of all this for you guys. David actually talked to Land Development, Water Management, I'm sorry, and they were under the impression that they were only testing for the zinc and not other hazardous chemicals. But Brandon assured me this morning that they would be testing for other, but I believe in the plans it says testing for zinc. I could be wrong, but.
Yes, if you'd like to respond to that specifically.
Yeah, so in the settlement agreement, zinc was the main concern, and so we agreed to having zinc as the main focus of our efforts. When we reached out to the Water Management District and then the DEP, they recommended we add testing for water hardness, and so we've also added that to our testing. And so when we do the testing across the 3 groundwater wells, 8 soil samples, and 3 surface waters, those are water as it sits, we'll test that as well. We'll look for those 2 things, but that's what we're planning to include.
Okay, my question is, we were also concerned about the runoff from the panels, if there would be harmful chemicals coming off of those and getting into the groundwater, the runoff. And we would like to request that they test for the other chemicals that could be coming off the panels. Because, I think your test is only for 5 years, am I right? Yep. Okay, but as these panels break down, just like your windows at home, the seals break loose. And if you're going to get any leakage, you're going to get it after a 5-year period probably. And so we would like to see testing continued for a longer period of time than the 5 years, because I think they say the life of the panels are 15 to 20 years, something like that. And, we talked about panels, talked about the cadmium and the other things that we didn't know, plus the pesticides that will be used. So, Brandon said they would test for other things, but I just want to make sure that they are testing. And we will be testing as well from around all of our homes, because we've made a pact that we're going to have our water tested now, and then we will be testing it once a year ourselves just to make sure. So, I don't know if he wants to address that anymore or not, so.
Hi, yeah, so this is new to us. We've been discussing this for quite a while, the sampling protocols. We sent them to the Water Management District, we sent them to DEP, and DEP told us they thought the protocols were good. We're clearly trying to work with you all and give you comfort in this regard. I'll say again, we are the largest builder of solar properties in the U.S., and we don't test for this anywhere because we're very confident in the panels and what's happening. But to work with the neighbors, we agreed to do soil sampling, groundwater sampling. So we're doing this work. We're testing for the zinc. We've added in the hardness. But I think we're at a point now where we're confident the data will give us the information we need.
Would we encounter a circumstance where, based on test results at some point towards the end of the 5-year period, where these outside agencies might suggest continued testing?
I'm going to offer you my professional opinion, no, that I don't think they're going to need that or feel the need for that. If they did, obviously we would extend the testing, but we're not doing this under their regulatory review. We're just doing.
I understand, and you're absolutely offering this to provide additional comfort for the folks that live around there.
Right.
Ms. Herring, I'd defer to those people that suggested the additional chemicals or the additional testing protocol beyond just zinc. If they believe that testing needs to continue beyond the 5 years based on the results in this first 5 years, if they think they would, I would expect that they would recommend additional testing.
I think
Now,
that's
whether or
well
not
said,
they
yeah.
could require it at that point, that would be a state regulatory kind of item. I don't know that we can.
Okay.
And if
But
they
I
recommended
would
it,
expect
we'd
that
do it, yeah.
if for some reason something shows up in these
Yes.
tests that would be detrimental, that certainly Gulf Power would want to continue that for their own liability purposes, to try to address anything that might be damaging the environment. And I think that the agencies that might review those test results would absolutely recommend that. I'm not sure that, given where we are in the process, that we can today.
I agree.
But
Okay.
I certainly understand your concern, and it looks like that they've expanded the testing beyond what was agreed to in the settlement agreement based on recommendations from those agencies, and we certainly applaud that.
Well,
and
as
agree
you
with
know,
that.
we were not part of the negotiation of the
I
settlement
understand
agreement. I
that.
think we would have more of this ironed out before this point. So, but the only other comment that I wanted to make, Alex Webster, who works for the Water Management, he only, the test wells where they're going to be placed, he said he only saw elevations. He was not provided with plans where the solar panels would be placed, but since we're not testing for the panels anyway, I guess that's a moot point.
I would expect he would look at where those wells are in regard to the topography of the site, and his knowledge of water.
So that's what he
Yes,
said.
that those were probably in the right locations, or?
That's what he said, based on the elevation, but he did not see panel locations as it relates to runoff water and things. And that's what he told David. And I sure wish David had been here today, but he couldn't leave work. I've talked briefly with Brandon, and he said he had finally talked to the county about Harrison right-of-way, giving some right-of-way there. And we just wanted to make sure that we kind of included this today.
Yes, sir, and we have added to our record this morning from Anna Hudson at Public Works, progress on that Harrison Road right-of-way project, cooperation from Gulf Power. They don't quite have the description yet for the dedication, but she asked that that be a condition of any approval, that be accomplished prior to commencement.
All right, Brandon also shared that with me too. Also, another item I have discussed with Brandon this morning.
Just one second, I'd like to clarify you mentioned prior to commencement. Now, when we mentioned that we were willing to work with the county, we're completely okay with working through that process. We do understand that sometimes that could take time, and so what we would like to put some framework around is that we could still commence the project, still start construction, and work through those details if they conflict. And another main thing is that we wouldn't have any impact to our setbacks that as they sit today, or landscape buffers. And so as we get to understand what that actual room that's needed for the right-of-way, we can adjust our plans. But
Yeah, and I think we're fine with the setbacks, to be honest. The main issue is if the county is not ready by the time we're ready. We don't, if the county is saying they're not ready to expand the road or take the right-of-way, that won't prevent us from construction. And when they're ready and can tell us what right-of-way they want, we're glad to give it to them.
And I think they were right at the end of being able to define that legal description.
I'm hopeful, but again, I'm not the county, so we're just a little nervous that there may be a glitch there, and that could hold us up. We'd prefer to condition it that when the county comes to us, and we'll get them the right-of-way, because it's just not defined now, and I'm concerned it's going to be a year from now, or I don't know what's going on with that road.
I mean, what is conveyed to me this morning was a period of days, not weeks, days.
no, I didn't get a copy of Anna's email. And we did talk yesterday, and
If you
If I
wanna-
may, Mac, yesterday, after we talked to you,
Yeah.
Brandon, our surveyor did go out, and he was working on it this morning, and he was he was almost done. But he was finishing it up this morning. So it should be very soon.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. We appreciate that. We were just
I
concerned
anticipate,
about-
I would think probably by the end of the week, if not the first of
All right,
next
well,
week.
That's fine. Okay.
Okay, and the only other thing I have is Brandon and I discussed, and they've agreed to this, along McKee Road, where they will use as their access point. We had asked them, and looking at their plans, if they would move it down to where there's already an existing access point going into the property, that our property across the road would provide buffering for that, from our space, and they've agreed to that on McKee Road. That they would look at it.
Yeah, and when we get closer to construction, we optimize our site, so I've let her know that that's not a problem.
That's it.
You sure this is it?
Well, our county
We've been at this a
commissioners,
long time.
well, our county commissioners kind of tied our hands, or I'm sure by now we'd probably been in litigation, but, but we do appreciate them working with us on it, and since we found out it was a done deal anyway, like you said here, we decided we just have to make the best of it, and Gulf Power has worked with us, and we do appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for working with them and with the neighbors, and I think Gulf Power has made quite a bit of changes since the settlement, to try to address these things, and we certainly appreciate that and appreciate you working with them also.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to make a comment about this particular application? Yes, ma'am, if you could come to the podium.
Brandon and I had discussed, and they said they could not because it was along the county road, the buffer beside my house, not the one they removed, another one. Where they're putting that buffer, there's also transmission lines that run that, I work for a power company too. We know we can't put no trees, no nothing under that. That was what I was trying to get across to you the other day, because you're going to have such a huge section that you can't or coverage of that, move it further back, because you've only got a small section you have to cover. That's what I was, because if you look at the
Oh, here, I have
shows
the
the-
landscape plan.
it
Do you want me
shows
to
the
grab it?
Yeah, sure.
So just to catch everyone, because we had two separate meetings, and in those conversations, we moved the buffer that was directly south of her house on our property. Yep. Well, yeah, so what we've done, she has to have it removed down to the south part of the block, the wetland area, so has a lot of forest area, and we relocate the buffer out to the road. We put our vegetative buffer in B and B, an area that's undisturbed, so that way we know it's not going to be impacted by us. All this area back here, we are going to maintain over time, so we're grass cut, so put the buffer out in the front of the road, similar to how we saw it across the whole site. So why we haven't extended it all the way up, because there's a radius around the driveway that we can't install basically close to the driveway, so all of the code there, and so we increased the width of that buffer from 250 feet up to 400. So we have added more buffer along. Right. All out.
Does that address your question, or? Thank you. Could you come to the podium and say that, please?
Or Dorothy here, and I just want to say, we really appreciate the work that Renee has put into this. I mean, I'm even emailing her and her at home, and she's responding back. She has been wonderful to work with through this project. She's been sympathetic, but tried to stay within her boundaries and everything, and I'm sure that Gulf Power could say the same thing about her. She's just been terrific through this whole project, and we thank her.
Yeah, Mr. Carpenter, one last thing, if that's all right. We absolutely agree with that and appreciate all the work by Renee and everyone. Regarding the right-of-way on the road, would it be possible to maybe put a date on it from the county? Maybe like December 1st, put it out there, but if for some reason there's a holdup from the county side, by December 1st, we could proceed after that, and we're willing to work with you. We just have a little concern about that.
I would have to,
Pardon me?
I would have to speak with Public Works.
We got a specific request from them, and we generally follow those. I truly believe, based on what's been communicated to me, and again this morning, that this is just a matter of days before we have the description provided to you for the dedication. I would like to think we could have that before we would have, subject to this being approved this morning, the final plan set to attach to the development order.
Okay, we appreciate that. We'll accept that. We're just going to then rely on the county here a little bit, so we'll follow up.
I would ask you to trust us on this one.
Okay, okay.
Because believe me, we would, as long as we've had this project in review, and the level of emotion surrounding this particular project, if we've met the requirements for this development order, we would like to issue it so that it can commence. Based on all the hard work and the time and effort that has gone into getting the project to a point where it's subject to being approved. But I think we do need to keep that. We will absolutely commit to getting that to you just as quick as we can, because we do not want to hold up this for that item if we've met all of the other requirements.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Recommendation, we'd like to move this forward to a development order based on the conditions that we get the right-of-way dedication, that we get the landscaping changes that have been requested from Ms. Ashburn. And I believe they've already just submitted plans, meets the request of the hearings request.
Thank you, Renee. We have recommended motion. Do we have motion at the die?
So moved.
We have motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Last chance. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is approved to move forward to development order. Thank you very much to everyone that's been involved in this particular project. Next item we have this morning is item number 12, Coconut K. This is a major development reviewed by Renee Bradley. Renee, if you could introduce it for us. We'll wait for just a moment.
All right.
See you this morning.
I roll now.
Can't see with them or without them on, so.
I know. I know.
We have a request for about a 5-minute recess. So. We'll be back at 11. Multiple requests.
That's one thing I would love to talk to you sometime about stormwater and stuff, because it does get confusing unless you have it for your experience. I mean,
But what they don't understand is like a dynamic process. There's things soaking in the ground as stormwater's coming in, and it's overflowing.
a lot of that,
and it's staging up.
like they said, they already have issues there. That has nothing to do with what's going on now. It's that if the drainage and the stormwater is correct and it can hold it, that's nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But fence thing, don't want to start.
It's low.
We got, if you start.
Well, then
I know
issues,
it's right too.
but then issues with maintenance. If you put the fence along.
We have to have the easement, and
Yeah.
you're talking 20 or 25 feet easement on
Yeah.
each ditch.
You're not gonna do that. You won't be able. Some of those ditches are right on people's property lines back to park.
We have easements for multiple property owners.
Yeah.
They've been there since the 60s. We just got a new mower, it's pretty, county bought 3 of them, we checked out. It goes 40 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty sweet. County's got 3, so they can't maintain all the ditches on the south end. So, we got one side arm. That's crazy.
Mm-mm-mm.
And the rain, I was almost, what about the pictures today?
Yeah.
It's flooded everywhere.
Try not to get too deep.
Well,
into
we're so
the
saturated.
technical side, but are you offering technical because it's on and on and on.
No. That's why I mean, he doesn't have the education like you were talking about. He didn't want to. I could see when you started talking, I started to understand more. I'm learning a lot more, like, so you understand.
If you had a 5-gallon bucket, you put a notch at the top of it.
It's constantly percolating.
Yeah,
and
and you
it's
can put
gonna
some whole,
maintain.
right, and then as it's coming in, it's staging up, and it'll reach a point where it won't stage up anymore because you're discharging and it's soaking in at a certain rate.
What you touched on, it's almost historical. All we've had this year alone. And we do rainfall data across the whole district.
And we have it even in central, or, north central Florida, the
we
water
have
management district, I think our surplus was last month was 7 point something inches over the average, and the average goes back to like the 60s or 70s.
Well, this year, not the same rain count, but, we have 22 rain gauges through.
Yes.
And the west end got most of the rain this week. And we're data, it's historical, like we're over, above, whatever. So, and we're saturated, you can't take any more.
I don't know how.
Go to
I framed
Pensacola
it
on a
was.
2-inch rain event.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, we were there Sunday, my wife and I. It's
Yeah.
like 2 inches, the roads were like that deep.
No.
Deep boy.
Oh, yeah. Good for something. If not nothing, good for something.
Perks of sitting so close.
Right. It was. I'm gonna get the chair. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, you, Did I? Did I?
We, ready to come back? We'll bring technical review back to order here, and we're on agenda number 12, Coconut K. Renee, if you could introduce that one for us.
Sir, this is a major development order application submitted by Henderson Engineering and Consulting on behalf of S&L Carrion Properties. They're requesting to develop 31 single-family lots and associated infrastructure on 16.1 acres. With future land use of residential and zoning districts of low density, the property is located in District 4 and identified by the parcel IDs in your packet. We do have some outstanding technical review comments from Public Works, Engineering, Flood Zone Management, and Environmental, as well as Planning and GIS. The applicant has been provided a copy of the report, and at this time, if it pleases the committee, I will turn it over to the applicant. And I'd like to enter the staff report into the record, please.
So entered. Thank you, Renee. What's that traffic outstanding? For engineering comment.
I reviewed the traffic report comments and
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hear from the applicant.
John Henderson, Henderson Engineering.
You received the comments?
Yes, sir, I have. All the comments are pretty minor. Traffic comment, that 10th edition of the ITE had actually lowered the traffic counts. There's a new equation. I don't really have any questions on any of the engineering, flood. That's just some hatching to delineate the fill areas. Public Works was really the only comments or questions that I had. One of the comments was that we have an entry gate. As you know, Mr. Chairman, we were requested to connect to the Walton Way connector versus the easement that's existing there. As part of that, we had to put in a gate because I expect that all the people in the old Florida Lakes will be driving through our neighborhood to get the quickest way out to 98. So the gate's like 10 feet off of the property line. It's on the county property. It'll be in an easement. But I did that because the first lot right there, I didn't want to kind of preclude any EMS access to that first lot. So being that it's on an easement, I didn't really think that that was an issue. I can shift it over, that's not a problem.
Know that we have any other private gates on public property?
In an easement? An access easement? I can't gate it off at Hidden Lake Drive because that's still an easement there. So I put that in. Let's go on to the number 4. It says that the access road through the public property needs to be maintained by the developer. Well, if the developer needs to maintain that road, I would suggest that we're going to put the gate up close to Walton Way instead of on our property to preclude any access to the road and people damaging the roadway that we'll have to maintain. Now, I met with Chance. We had a meeting over at South Walton Utilities about utility connections and stuff, and we discussed this road and the maintenance. We're actually extending a sewer line out into the public property and running a stub over to the northeast of our project. That's the closest sewer access, so Chance suggested that that would maybe a location for a future restroom building, parking area for the park. So in light of that, the county will probably be using that road as access to the restroom and parking area. So I'd suggest that the county is probably going to be the one to maintain that road.
Well, if the county's going to maintain it, I wouldn't expect we'd be maintaining a gate location.
Well, the gate's east of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Like I say, I can push it over to the property line. I have the little island right off of the cul-de-sac, that's gonna have the keypad. I don't want too much room between the keypad and the gate, so people don't pull in there, realize they can't get in the gate.
Yeah, they've got to be able to turn around.
That's what the reason for the cul-de-sac.
Is there going to be a connection to Hidden Lakes Drive?
No, sir. No, we got rid of the connection.
Okay.
We can't block that access.
But that's private easement for the benefit of the parties to the easement, and properties to the south.
Yeah, that was all part of an old unrecorded subdivision from years ago, before there was any development in Old Florida Lakes. I mean, that's an existing easement. It's an access utility easement for all those properties. So the properties to the south of us have a right to that easement. I don't think that they can develop much down there, but they could always put one single-family home down there.
And you're still going to provide them access to your new roadway?
Well, they have that easement through there. If they want to build a driveway through it, they can build a driveway through it. We can give them access through Walton Way, but they've already got the access through Hidden Lakes Drive. I would block that off, but like I say, we really can't block that off. I wouldn't have a gate either, but I know people are gonna cut through there.
If they can't get to your road though.
Oh, they can, I mean, they'll drive, it's just gonna be grass. They drive right through there.
I got some questions about that arrangement, which I'll hold till later, but
Okay.
go through the rest of them.
All right, well, the road maintenance. I mean, we can move our gate or get rid of the gate, but the maintenance of the road on the public property, I would suggest, is the county's responsibility. Either that, or we can move the gate, like I said, up to right at Walton Road.
Do we have the easement area defined yet?
No, it's not shown. We need to decide what we want to do. 50-foot easement. That's what the right-of-way is. I expect that we'll have a legal description, and that'll be signed by the county when the development order is signed.
We need to have all that worked out with Public Works at some point pretty soon.
That was one of Bill's comments about the easement.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure how it was gonna occur. I know that road is under design or going to be designed, and
It's under.
And mainly, I think my concern was, we issue a development order, you can't really, I guess you could build it, but there just won't really be any kind of access to
Yeah.
it until a later date. So that was just my concern.
Yeah.
More of a clerical.
I asked Ed earlier if he had any idea when the road's gonna be built, and he said that was a good question. So I guess that's a question to Mr. Carpenter, if you have any idea.
And I don't have a firm schedule on that. I know we talked to the public about it this past week. I think the road is pretty much committed. Some of our public doesn't like it and doesn't want the connection to Walton Way. I think the board has already certainly, and the hearings related to land use, indicating that they wanted a connection on any development on these parcels to come from that roadway.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the direction you're heading. So I think you did hear that pretty clearly.
Yes, yes.
The exact schedule for building that roadway, I know that we have an easement that's been defined, but I'm not sure exactly when that will commence.
I have the plans. I mean, that's what I based my design on, so I know the plans are finished or nearly finished. So, yeah, but I wasn't aware of what the construction schedule is going to be on that.
And I don't know that we have a firm one yet. I'm sure the developer has some idea of their, at least estimate of schedule. I think Public Works probably has some idea of when this road would actually be constructed. I know there's some permitting that's got to be required to get through the wetland to the north. But I don't have that scheduled today. Let's see what other questions we have.
We need to rework the sidewalk and put a crosswalk. I show a sidewalk going down that extension out to Walton Way. I don't think that sidewalk's actually required. So, you know, I'm not sure if we want to put in the crosswalk, the crosswalk alert, flashing, and all the requirements that was requested. We just eliminate that whole sidewalk along there. I haven't really addressed that with my client yet, if he wants to put that in. There is no curb on the sidewalk, so curb ramps and that sort of thing isn't an issue.
Well, sidewalk buyout is a very unpopular topic at.
Oh, we're putting it in the subdivision. And it included some of the crosswalk signage and advance warning, the painting and advance warning signage. And it's the 30A crosswalks. Like I said, I'm just not sure. I mean, almost that should be part of the Walton Way plans.
There are certain areas where we don't have sidewalks on both sides of the street.
The Walton Way plans just show it on the west side. I have a crosswalk, painted crosswalk shown, but no signage.
We probably need to sit down with Public Works and look at just what can be placed in the easement, and try to flesh that out a little bit further.
Okay.
I mean, certainly an agreement for improvements to be constructed in the right-of-way easement. There may be some public benefit that you can determine there. It might offset, a license to put the gate in the easement. We can demonstrate that.
Okay.
Just be thinking about that, and we need to meet with them and finalize some of these details.
Well, that was one of Chance's first comments, and we weren't really meeting about this. We were meeting about South Walton Utilities connections, and I told him what the commissioners had requested, and so that was his first question, who's going to maintain it. And then we started talking about a restroom building and some parking and stuff, and maybe it can be a joint use roadway. The next question I had was there's drainage issues in the Holiday Shores area. And they want us to attenuate the 100-year storm. And we're not contributing to any of those drainage issues on Forest Shore Drive. We're actually right next to the golf garden, and they did a 25-year storm. We're actually been talking, my client owns the property 13 acres to the east of this and another 8 acres to the east of that. And we've been talking and had some discussions with Charlie about trying to put in a large retention pond there to try to solve all these issues. The county right now is working on from Holiday Road to 98 on Forest Shore Drive. Next phase is from Holiday Road to Walton Way. And so we're right in the planning stages of that, and we've got some good opportunities to help with that drainage situation there. But we're not contributing to that at all. We're draining into the wetland, which drains out to the DOT ditch. And there was a lot of discussion about that earlier, about discharging into the wetland. Well, you can't really stop the discharge into the wetland or the wetland will dry up. I mean, there are some benefits to adding stormwater at the pre-development rate to the wetland. And so we're discharging into that. We're not discharging to the north to Forest Shore Drive. It's not shown on the GIS as a critical area. It wasn't part of the engineering requirements. I don't think that we're really, that should be a requirement to attenuate the 100-year storm. Not a closed basin. I mean, it just doesn't meet any of the requirements in the code.
I agree with you. It was a recommendation by Public Works to project needs to attenuate the 100-year coastal storm.
In fact, the old Florida lakes just north of us, they have some flooding issues. Their pond's not very well maintained, and it backs up to our property. We're putting in a swale there and a pipe under our street to allow that flood waters to discharge out to the wetland also. So it's going to be fixing some of their problems.
How about comment number 8?
Yeah, that's another one that was on my list to ask questions about. That's not in the code. Only in floodways do you have to do the no-rise calculation. We're in a floodplain, not in a floodway. And we actually, we did the flood elevation determination. We did all the calculations for that. And our engineer that did that, we actually emailed the county, Haley, to ask what we needed to do for that. There was no post-development calculations required. We just needed to determine the elevation and if we filled it, to provide any floodplain compensation. And we did that. And Haley's comments were that she just wanted some hatching or some delineation of the fill areas and the floodplain that we were filling. I do have a chart on there that shows the amount that we're filling in and the amount that we're compensating. She just wanted some further delineation. But doing it extra, I mean, before we finalized our flood study, we contacted the county to ask what was required. That wasn't a requirement.
But you're providing the compensatory storage?
Yes, sir.
Haley, do you have a comment? this one?
Yeah.
Got a response to that comment?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah, I expected that. I've already done some hatching and to show the, that's all my comments on that, on Public Works. I had no comments on environmental or flood. The only other thing was, road schedule.
Maybe we can get a better idea about that when we meet with Public Works about the easement area.
Yeah, I've already met, talked with Charlie about the flooding around there and trying to help that. I've talked to Chance about the park. And, so I was a little confused about some of these comments. But yeah, I think to get everybody together, it might get everybody on the same page.
Okay.
All the rest of the technical comments are just simple.
Well, this will get a public hearing at Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners, but we're going to take the opportunity to invite any technical questions about this application. Anyone in the audience wishing to ask a technical question about the Coconut Cay proposed development? I see no hands up, so we'll close that portion. Do we have a recommended motion, Renee?
Sounds as though we still need a meeting with Public Works to resolve Public Works' comments, but I think we could move this forward to Planning Commission based on getting a resubmittal satisfying all the existing comments and them getting a meeting with Public Works to respond to theirs, and we won't schedule it for Planning Commission until this is taking place.
That good with you?
Oh, fine. Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll entertain that motion.
I'll make the motion as stated by staff.
We have a motion to conditionally approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved to move forward to Planning Commission once all comments have been satisfied. Thank you very much. That'll move us to item number 13, the watercolor pole barn. Minor development reviewed by Renee also. If you could introduce that one for us.
Minor development order application submitted by Anderson Engineering Incorporated on behalf of the St. Joe Company requesting to construct a 3,120 square foot warehouse on 33 plus or minus acres with future land use of mixed use in the zoning district of Coastal Center. The property is located in District 5 and is identified by the parcel IDs in your packet. And I'd like to enter the staff report to the record, please.
So entered. Is this going on the location we refer to at the back of house?
Yes. So we do have a few outstanding comments from floodplain surveyor has some outstanding comments as well. See any of these that would not be pretty simple to respond to. I'm basically just wanting to clarify if this is ancillary or a drawdown, making sure that it's not a commercial use for the pole barn. That said, sir, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Renee. Good morning.
Sorry, between St. Joe and the county, we couldn't find that, so we did get that done. We've got that located on the plans now and relocated the stormwater pond based on where that was located, so we just moved that over just a little bit.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Recommended motion, Renee?
Minor development order, sir, so we'd recommend moving it forward to the development order once all comments have been satisfied.
Thank you. And before we entertain that motion, we're going to open a public hearing and invite any question about this particular application from any member of the audience. Anyone here wishing to ask a question about this application? Seeing none, we'll close that portion, and we'll entertain the recommended motion.
I'll motion as stated by staff.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item's approved, subject to satisfaction of outstanding comments. This will move us to number 14, Water Sound Origins, Nature Walk Phase 3 plat, reviewed by Renee Bradley. Renee, if you could introduce it for us.
Yes, sir. This is a major plat application submitted by Innerlight Engineering Corporation on behalf of the Water Sound Company, LLC. They're requesting to plat 116 single-family lots and a future amenity area and associated infrastructure as Water Sound Origins Nature Walk Phase 3 on 38.99 acres. This property has a future land use and zoning district of Bay Walton Sector Plan Village Center, and it's located in District 1 and is identified by the parcel ID in your packet. And I'd like to enter the staff report into the record, please.
So entered. We still have a few outstanding comments.
Yes, sir. We have one from surveying and one from environmental and planning. The recreation fees on this has already been paid, is my understanding. So our fees have been paid. I don't believe any of these comments would hold the plat up. And move it forward to the BCC once the comments have been satisfied.
Okay. Thank you,
And
Renee.
enter the staff report to the record, please.
Yes, ma'am, so entered.
Okay, thank you.
We have recommended motion. I guess we need to hear from the applicant.
I'll say, hey, I'm David Smith with Innerlight Engineering. I agree with Renee, the comments are minor, so I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
You don't have a more controversial project to bring us today?
I've been there.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for David?
Thank you.
Take the recommended motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to move this forward to the Board of County Commissioners for final approval, subject to satisfaction of any outstanding comments. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is approved conditionally to move forward. To number 15, Greenway at Water Sound plat, also reviewed by Renee Bradley. Renee, if you could introduce this one for us.
Yes, sir. This is a major plat application application also submitted by Innerlight Engineering on behalf of the Water Sound Company. They're requesting to develop 62 single-family lots and associated infrastructure as greenway at Water Sound on 32.54 acres. This is also future land use and zoning of Bay Walton Sector Plan in Village Center and the same zoning district. This is in District 1, and may I enter a staff report into the record, please?
So entered.
It looks like we only had one comment from survey on this project outstanding. The recreational fees have also been paid on this one. I did have a mishap in an earlier staff report where I had incorrect maps. That's been corrected, so I think what you have before you is correct. And we did have an email about the traffic on Breaker, US Highway 98 and Breaker in reference to this plat. We have sent them the suggested condition that we are getting a right-hand turning lane on US Highway 98, so they've seen Ms. Anna's comments on that, and we actually got an email appreciating that response this morning. So with that, I would turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Renee.
David Smith with Innerlight Engineering, and the comments are very minor, and so we would respectfully request to move forward. I do want to echo what Renee said, is St. Joe did agree to construct the turn lane there on Breakers off US 98, so they've agreed to do that, so that will happen.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding this particular application? Recommend a motion?
And that we move this forward to the next available BCC agenda once all comments have been satisfied. And we've received Mylar in hand.
Mylar in hand, so moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to conditionally approve, subject to satisfaction of outstanding comments and production of signed Mylar. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved to move forward to BCC as soon as we've satisfied all the outstanding comments and have the Mylar signed. Number 16, Water Sound Camp Creek Phase 1B plat, also reviewed by Renee. You can introduce that one for us.
Yes, sir. This is plat application submitted by Innerlight Engineering on behalf of Camp Creek Residential Development, LLC. They're requesting to plat 44 single-family lots as Phase 1B of Water Sound Camp Creek on 21.85 acres with a future land use of Bay Walton Sector Plan Village Center, and zoning is the same. This is located in District 5 and is identified by the parcel IDs in your packet. I'd like to enter the staff report into the record, please.
So entered.
The outstanding comments are from the county surveyor, floodplain management, and planning. These are minor comments. I'd like to turn it over to the applicant, sir, unless you have further questions.
We'll hear from the applicant.
David Smith with Innerlight Engineering, and I agree with Renee. The comments are very minor, and we will get those addressed, and we would respectfully request to move forward, please.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions from TRC on this particular application? We'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to move this forward to the Board of County Commissioners, sir, once we have Mylar in hand and all the comments have been addressed. And the fees on this one's also been paid.
Thank you, Renee. We have a recommended motion. Do we have a motion that dies?
Motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second to conditionally approve this, subject to satisfaction of any outstanding comments and production of the signed Mylar. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? The motion is approved. Thank you. That moves us to item number 17. Alys Beach Block KK, lots 7 through 18, minor development, reviewed by Tim Brown. Tim, if you could introduce it for us.
Yes, thank you. This is a minor development or application submitted by Innerlight Engineering requesting approval to develop 12 single-family lots and associated infrastructure in Block KK of the Alys Beach PUD on 2.6 acres with a future land use of mixed use and a zoning of TND. Property is located in District 5. Pretty minor comments. Let's see, planning comments. Have not received any fire comments to date. Looks like planning comment from GIS that there was lack of road names, but I think you just missed the road name because as far as I saw, it was on there. But minor comments. With that, I'd like to enter the staff report into the record, and I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Tim.
Smith with Innerlight Engineering, and we agree with Tim. We'll have these comments addressed. They are minor, so we will get this resubmitted.
You're due for some easy ones.
I agree. So you'll hear no complaints from me.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding this particular application?
I don't have any.
This is minor development. We'll take the opportunity to open a public hearing and invite any questions or comments about this project. Anyone here wishing to speak on this project? I see no hands. We'll close that part and we'll entertain a motion. Or we recommend a motion.
All right. Recommend approval of the project and move it forward to development order once all remaining comments are resolved.
We have a recommended motion. Do we have a motion of the dais?
Moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Likewise. Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved to move forward to development order, subject to satisfaction of outstanding comments. And that will move us to the next Alys Beach project, number 18, Alys Beach Block GG, lots 1 through 20, also reviewed by Tim. You can introduce it for us, Tim.
Yes, thank you. This is a minor development order application submitted by Innerlight Engineering requesting approval to develop 20 single-family lots and associated infrastructure in Block GG of the Alys Beach PUD on 4.38 acres with the future land use of mixed use and a zoning of TND. Property is located in District 5. This one has outstanding comments from planning, floodplain, and environmental. Also, I have not received fire comments on this application to date. With that, I'd ask that the staff report be entered into the record, and I'll turn it over to the applicant.
So entered. Thank you, Tim.
Record, I'm David Smith with Innerlight Engineering. We do have a few comments to address on this one, but again, we can certainly get those addressed, and several of them we need to further clarify some areas. I know there was a preservation comment and some things like that we'll better illustrate on our resubmittal, and but we can certainly get these addressed, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Any further questions from David or for David?
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a recommended motion on this item, Tim?
Yes, recommended motion to approve the project pending resolution of all remaining outstanding comments and move it forward to the development order.
We have a motion at the dais. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Well, before we certify the vote, we'll take the opportunity to have that public hearing that I skipped. Anybody in the audience wish to make a comment about this particular project? Seeing none, we'll close that. And if we can, just vote again so that that's afterwards. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved to move forward to development order, subject to satisfaction of all outstanding comments. That will move us to item number 19, Alys Beach Block V, lots 1 through 8, reviewed by Tim Brown. Tim, if you can introduce that one for us.
Yes, thank you. This is a minor development order application submitted by Innerlight Engineering requesting approval to develop 8 single-family residential lots and associated infrastructure in Block V of the Alys Beach PUD on 2.06 acres with the future land use of mixed use and a zoning of traditional neighborhood development. Project's located in District 5. There's outstanding comments. From planning, floodplain, and environmental, have not received any comment from fire. With that, I would ask that the staff report be entered into the record, and I'll turn it over to the applicant.
So entered, Tim. Thank you.
David Smith with Innerlight Engineering, and the comments are minor on this one as well, so we will get those addressed on our resubmittal, and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for David?
Thank you.
David. We'll entertain the recommended motion on this one.
Yes, recommend approval of the project pending resolution of all outstanding comments and move it forward to the development order.
We have a recommended motion. Do we have a motion at the dais? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to conditionally approve this application subject to satisfaction of all outstanding comments. All in minor development. Before we vote, we'll have a public hearing. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak about this particular item? Seeing none, we'll close that portion. We have a recommended motion at the dais. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved to move forward to development order subject to satisfaction of any outstanding comments. And that will move us to item number 20. Spooky Lane Subdivision, a minor development reviewed by Bob. Bob, if you could introduce it for us.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The agent has informed me this morning after the meeting started that the owner would like to withdraw this project.
Okay. Then we'll note no further action and look for that written request for withdrawal.
Yes, sir.
With that news, we'll move to item number 21, the Mid-America Insulation request for minor development order.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this project number is MIN 21000040. This is a minor development application submitted by Dunlap and Shipma, PA, on behalf of RATA LLC, requesting to keep a 1,800 square feet of the existing office warehouse on 1.25 plus or minus acres. The future land use is rural residential currently, and the zoning district is currently rural village. There is a rezoning application going through the process. The property is located in District 1, and the parcel number is published in your staff report. Mr. Chair, there's just a few outstanding comments. I don't see anything that the agent couldn't answer and respond. Before I turn it over to the agent, I'd just like to make one condition on this, that if approved, the DO will not go in effect until after the future land use amendment and rezoning is finished and either approved. And if it's not, then we're gonna have to not issue this DO. I'd like to enter staff report in the record, please.
Entered. So if I'm correct, the motion would be to conditionally approve this subject to satisfaction of outstanding comments and the board's approval of a land use change or zoning change.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and then just one other thing, they obtain their building permit since this is an open violation.
Okay.
Agent is here if you would like to speak to her.
Yeah, let's hear from the agent.
So good morning, Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Shipman for Mr. Estes. Yes, we are going through a land use amendment that will go to the Planning Commission actually next week. Revisit the Planning Commission and then on to the BCC, hopefully with no issues. So the minor development order resolves the issue of putting a building out there without a permit or without approval. And then after that, if the development order is approved based on getting the land use amendment, then we will apply for the building permits necessary to rectify the entirety of that code case.
What do we do if the land use is not approved?
Got a bad situation then. I mean, there's no other way to say it. He has to have the land use amendment before we can get the DO, before we can get a building permit. And if all that goes for naught, then he starts over, clears it out.
Okay. With that understanding, this would be a conditional approval subject to successful application to rezone.
Subject to the rezoning being approved by the Board of County Commissioners, the resolution of all the comments in the staff report as well, and that immediate application for the building permits once the DO is issued.
Okay. Karen, did you get all of that?
Chair, can I add one thing to stay consistent? As you know, I reported to you when I was out there doing a site visit, there were 3 semi-delivery trucks backed on the property and out of the property. When we initially spoke on this, we said that there would be no semi-deliveries, or at least would be kept marginal. They had the road blocked, the public road blocked, and their whole property filled with semis.
Is he letting people park there?
No, they were waiting. One was unloading, and the other 2 apparently were waiting their turn.
So these were 3 deliveries to the insulation business, not just random semis needing a place to park overnight.
He doesn't park overnight. I do believe he has deliveries for his insulation business. So if the question is, or if the comment is no semis, I'm not sure because I don't know what the answer is to that, but I would think if we need to stagger deliveries so that they don't all come at the same time. Tell me.
Concerned about blocking the public road.
Right.
Yeah, I think we can come up with a condition that would be acceptable
Okay.
to the applicant and to staff to address that for the benefit of the neighborhood.
Okay.
I mean, 3 semis at one time for that building's delivery seems pretty unusual, I would think, as far as the size of that business and how frequently they would get a delivery, but maybe they had a giant job somewhere.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I'll have to ask him, but I would think if the issue is too many of them there at one time blocking the road, then staggering the delivery dates would be the appropriate response. In addition to that, if he's doing anything where he's, if we're doing anything that is a mass amount, you know, he may need to figure out another option for that, but, you know, certainly we don't want him to be blocking the right of way.
Could you come up with an acceptable condition to address that concern?
Sure, I'll draft something up, give it to Bob once we talk to the client, and we can add it to the development order conditions.
The client, just to address this in that
Sure.
way. Covered. Any other questions about any of the comments? Anyone? Public work? No? We have recommended motion with several conditions. In addition to satisfaction of any outstanding comments in the staff report, and that any approval would be subject to the board allowing land use and/or zoning changes that would be appropriate for this kind of business. Now, one thing I would like to say is I don't see this as obligating the board to approve any land use change. This merely satisfies the requirement if they choose to do so.
Right, it's understood.
So with that as our parameters here, we have a recommended motion to conditionally approve subject to successful land and/or zoning is appropriate, and satisfaction of all the conditions of the staff report, and one additional condition related to deliveries and the frequency of that. And obtaining the building permit once the DO is issued after the land use has changed. I think we got it.
And I'll make a motion to that effect.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. This is a minor development, so we're going to take just a moment for public comment. Anyone in the audience wishing to make a comment about this particular application? Seeing none, we'll close that portion. And we have a motion at the dais. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved as described. Thank you, Melissa. I think we have one more item, number 22, Lot 10, Elysee Court Replat. Reviewed by Bob Baronti. Bob, if you could introduce this one for us.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is PLA 21-000033. This is a minor replat application submitted by Paul Geary on behalf of D. Coppola di Letta Investments, LLC, requesting to replat Lot 10 of Elysee Court from one lot to two lots with a future land use of residential in the zoning district of residential preservation. The property is located in District 5 and is identified by the parcel number in your staff report. Mr. Chair, I understand that we cannot increase density in residential preservation. However, they have in their deed the right to do this. It's been verified by our planning attorney, and I mentioned it in the staff report. The comments are minor. The agent is here today. If you have any questions for him, I enter the staff report in the record, please.
It's so entered.
Do you have any questions for me before we?
Yes, I do. I mean, these are deeded density, is what we're calling on here.
Yes, sir. I wrote the exact verbiage in the staff report. And it clearly.
As opposed to covenants and restrictions that would suggest that.
Correct. And legal concurs. And also, just for your information, there's quite a few other lots that are guaranteed commercial uses that we haven't seen yet. General commercial uses. just to point that out. We may never, but this is something we may want to keep an eye on in that neighborhood. And it spells it out in the same deed in a different paragraph. It doesn't impact this case, but there are other exceptions for other lots. And I loaded the deed with those exceptions highlighted, so maybe if one comes up, we can go back to. Steve seems to think that this is the great exception than the rule. I didn't put the full deed in there, but I copied the verbiage that affects this parcel.
Are we assessing any of the impacts with the increase in density?
It has been reviewed by everyone that would review a plat, and the comments are minor.
Normally have a DO to authorize the plat. In this particular case, we're going straight from a deed to a plat.
Steve thought that was sufficient to go through this. Because of the verbiage in the deed that's very unlike the vast majority of deeds, and that it was before zoning, and we tracked it all the way back. But if you would want to continue to do a less than minor DO, I guess we could do it and get it done, and then move this forward if once comments are addressed, if you feel necessary. But I was just doing this as Steve recommended. Let's cite the deed and then a record, and then move forward. Whatever.
Yeah, I just have a concern that we may be skipping part of the process here. I mean, having the density authorized is one thing, but meeting the requirements of the Land Development Code for the density may be something different.
And this was a very old.
Tell you what, let's do. Since we can't resolve this here today, I'm going to suggest we conditionally approve this, subject to answering that question as to whether or not we need to have a DO companion to this replat.
Understand, but I was
decide that we don't, then what we do here today stands. If we decide that we do, then we'll pause and catch that part up. But I'm comfortable with that today. I know where it is, pretty straightforward. Just want to make sure we don't skip something that we need to be touching on.
And the only reason why I moved it this way is advice from Steve, but if you don't feel comfortable, I understand, and we can.
I know we have another one where there are covenants that suggest some amount of rights to additional density. But it's not in the deed. It's a separate project. And there are some unique circumstances in our universe. So I just want to make sure we get this one right. But I'm comfortable with where we are up to this point. I just want to make sure there's not a development order that we need to insert here. To authorize the replat. So with that, we would entertain a motion to conditionally approve, subject to answering that question.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that would be fine.
Get that question answered pretty quickly.
the meantime, he can resubmit and get his comments addressed, and then at least we would be ready to jump once we make the final decision.
Are y'all comfortable with that?
Mhm.
Then we'll entertain that motion at the dais.
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed likewise? Hearing none, this item is conditionally approved to move forward to the BCC, subject to satisfaction of any outstanding comments, and answering the question about whether or not we need to insert a development order into this process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, sir, and I think that, thank you, Paul. I think that concludes our agenda this morning. Unless anyone has anything else they'd like to talk about. School board? Wonderful. Thank you. If there's no other business, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved, we are adjourned.
Record 22 items, I motioned all of them. As long as it's ready. I was waiting on them.